All right, please be seated as we're about to begin. This meeting of the Community Development Board is called to order on May 17th, 2022. Welcome, everyone. Please join me in standing for our Pledge of Allegiance.
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This board consists of 7 members and 1 alternate who are appointed by the City Council and serve voluntarily. I am John Quattrocchi, and I will ask the other members and the staff to introduce themselves, beginning on my left.
Mike Flannery, Oak Report.
Andrew Codell.
Jay Hancock, Attorney for the Board.
Matt Menendez, Assistant City Attorney.
Bruce Rector.
Please remember to turn off your cell phones so that they do not become a distraction during the meeting. Please also refrain from having conversations in this room so that we might hear all the testimony given today. To ensure a complete record of this board's action, we ask that each individual wishing to speak, including the applicant, speak into the microphone at the podium in front of us. Clearly state your name and spell your last name for the clerk. Now I'll ask all those in attendance today who plan to speak to please rise and be sworn in by the clerk.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the entire truth? Thank you.
Agendas of today's meeting are on the podium to your left near the entry door. Also on this podium are a roster of the Community Development Board, the list of city staff experts and their resumes, the board's rules of procedure, and the annual schedule of this board. Our first order of business is to review and approve the minutes of last month's meeting. Do I have a motion?
Move we approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? At this time, there's an opportunity for anyone to be heard regarding any items that are not on today's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to bring a matter before the board? Seeing none. The board has adopted a consent agenda format, and the consent items are identified as such on the agenda. Consent agenda items are those items for which the Planning and Development Department recommends approval. The applicant is in agreement with any opposed conditions, and no written objections to the case have been received to date. Items may be removed from the consent agenda today by a member of the board, a member of the staff, or any person in the audience for questions or objections. I will read each item on the consent agenda, and if any person wishes to remove this item from the consent agenda, please so state or raise your hand, and we will remove it from the consent agenda. Items removed from the consent agenda will be heard in the regular order of the meeting. Items that remain on the consent agenda will be approved with a single vote. Item number 1, case FLD 2022-01003 at 800 Pennsylvania Avenue. Owner, Clearwater Neighborhood Housing Services, Inc. Applicant, Frank Cornier, Clearwater Neighborhood Housing Services. Location is 0.16 acres located on the northwest corner of Pennsylvania Avenue and Seminole Street. The board is reviewing a proposed detached dwelling use in the medium-density residential district for the property located at 800 Pennsylvania Avenue. The project includes a height of 15 feet, provides a minimum of 2 off-street parking spaces, and requests allowable flexibility for setbacks and a 6-foot fence in the front. Is there anyone wishing to have this item removed from today's consent? Item number 2, case FLD 2022-01004 at 1002 Jones Street. The owner is Clearwater Neighborhood Housing Services, Inc. Applicant, Frank Cornier. Clearwater Neighborhood Housing Services, location .16 acres, located on the northeast corner of Pennsylvania Avenue and Jones Street. The board is reviewing a proposed detached dwelling use in the medium-density residential district for the property located at 1002 Jones Street. The project includes a height of 15 feet, provides a minimum of 2 off-street parking spaces, and requests allowable flexibility for setbacks and a 6-foot fence in front. Is there anyone wishing to have this item removed from consent? Seeing none. Item 3, case FLD 2022-01005 at 900 LaSalle Street. Owner, Clearwater Neighborhood Housing Services, Inc. Applicant, Frank Cornier. Clearwater Neighborhood Housing Services. Location, .17 acres, located on the northeast corner of Roosevelt Avenue and LaSalle Street. The board is reviewing a proposed detached dwelling use in the medium-density residential district for the property located at 900 LaSalle Street. The project includes a height of 15 feet, provides a minimum of 2 off-street parking spaces, and requests allowable flexibility for setbacks and a 6-foot fence in front. Is there anyone wishing for this item to be removed? Seeing none. Item number 4, case FLD 2015-05016A at 401 and 405, 415, and 419 Coronado Drive, and 406, 410, 420 Hamden Drive. The owner is AP Beach Properties, LLC. The applicant is Brian J. Unks, the McFarland, Ferguson, and McMullen, PA. Location, 1.759 acres, bound by Coronado Drive to the west, Hamden Drive to the east, and 5th Street north. The board is reviewing an amendment to an approved Level 2 flexible development application, FLD 2015-05016, for the construction of a 166-unit hotel utilizing 66 permitted hotel units and an additional 100 units allocated from Hotel Density Reserve through Beach by Design, as currently approved through HDA 2013-08006, amended by HDA 2013-08006A, within the tourist district and a small hotel character district of Beach by Design for the property located at 401 and 405 and 415 and 419 Coronado Drive and 406, 410, 420 Hamden Drive. The project will be 100 feet in height, proposes a minimum of 199 off-street parking spaces. The project requests allowable flexibility from height, setback requirements, and the design guidelines of Beach by Design in a 2-year development order. Is there anyone here wishing to have this item removed from consent? Seeing none. Item number 5. Case FLD 2021-12023 at 1001 and 1003 and 1005 North Garden Avenue, 606 Cedar Street, 1138 Grove Street, 1001 North Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, and 1006 and 1008, 1010, 1012, and 1020, and 1026, and 1032 Blanche B. Littlejohn Trail, and 1012 Railroad Avenue, and 605, and 607, and 611, and 615, and 623, and 631 Palm Bluff Street. The owner is Palm Bluff Development Group, LLC. The applicant is Robert Pergolesi, Craig Kazarjan, and Sean P. Cashin, Gulf Coast Consulting. Location is 2.162 acres, bound by Palm Bluff Street, Blanche B. Littlejohn Trail to the east, Cedar Street to the south, and North Garden Avenue west. The board is reviewing a proposed mixed-use project with 60 attached dwelling units, to include 3 units allocated from Public Amenities Incentive Pool in the downtown district and the old character district for properties located at 1001 and 1003 and 1005 North Garden Avenue, 606 Cedar Street, 1138 Grove Street, 1001 North Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, and 1006 Blanche B. Littlejohn Trail, and 24 attached dwelling units and 5,000 square feet non-residential development in the commercial district for the properties located at 1008, 1010, 1012, and 1020, and 1026, and 1032, Blanchby Littlejohn Trail. 1012, Railroad Avenue, and 605, and 607, and 611, and 615, and 623, and 631 Palm Bluff Street. The proposal includes a building height of 45 feet in the D district and 55 feet in the C district, a minimum of 106 off-street parking spaces with the following requests. In the D district, requests 3 dwelling units to be allocated from public amenities incentive pool, allowable flexibility from setback requirements, building entry, location, and treatment, finished floor elevations, and location of parking. In the C district, request allowable flexibility from setback requirements, height, and landscaping. Is there anyone wishing to have this item removed from today's consent? Seeing none?
Forgive me for my ignorance. Has proper traffic study been on the traffic that that's gonna impose?
Are you talking about this project right here? At this point in time, it's not, if you want to remove it from consent to discuss items, it would have to be removed from consent item and then go into the normal course of the meeting. This particular point is just for if everybody's in agreement with the proposal on it and what's been done, it gets approved. If not, then if you want it to be removed to open it for discussion, that's up to you.
I guess I would like it open for discussion.
Okay, so remove. Okay, so we have 4 cases, if I'm doing this right, items 1 through 4.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve case numbers FLD 2022-1003, FLD 2022-01004, FLD 2022-01005, and FLD 2015-05016A. On today's consent agenda, based on evidence in the record, including the application and the staff report, and hereby adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law stated in the staff reports with conditions of approval as listed.
Second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Jay, do we need to do anything announcing a new member came to the board here?
That'd be a good idea.
If you would, just announce your name.
Hello, my name is Samuel Hutkin.
Okay. So if I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so we have 6 members today, right? So,
Yeah, so Mr. Huck will be a voting member today.
yeah, so nothing can be removed unless you, yeah, okay. We will now move on to the regular agenda. The cases we'll hear today will be a Level 2 quasi-judicial hearing. All Level 2 cases, such as flexible development, are considered quasi-judicial hearings. In a quasi-judicial hearing, the Community Development Board reviews the application, the staff report, correspondence, and all evidence presented today and makes a final decision subject to appeal. The board has previously qualified all the city staff who will testify as experts in their area of professional training, education, and experience. The lists of city staff experts and their resumes are in the handbook and the podium near the entry door. Any other professionals who desire to be qualified as an expert witness shall so request at the beginning of the case and present a resume to each board member. The board shall determine whether or not to qualify the person as an expert and in what field of study. At the beginning of each Level 2 case, I will ask for anyone who wishes to request party status to come forward and state your reasons. Party status may be granted if the person requesting such status demonstrates that they are a substantially affected person. The board will then determine whether or not to grant party status. Then the case will proceed as follows. Request for party status, presentation by planning and development staff, 10 minutes maximum. Presentation by the applicant, 10 minutes maximum. Presentation by persons with party status, 5 minutes per party maximum. Cross-examination of witnesses by planning development staff, cross-examination of witnesses by applicant, cross-examination of witnesses by persons with party status. Comments by the public, 3 minutes per person. Closing remarks by the Planning and Development staff, 3 minutes maximum. Closing remarks by persons granted party status, 3 minutes maximum. Closing remarks by applicant, 3 minutes maximum. Closing of the public hearing, discussion and vote by the board. Our first level 2 case, so we'll be going in case number 1 and then go back to the one that was removed, is that correct?
Back to your consent agenda item.
First? Okay.
We got the consent.
You've already read the item.
So I don't need to read it. Okay, our first level 2 case is item number 5, case FLD 2021-12023, as previously read. And is there anyone in the audience wishing to request party status of this case? Seeing none. At this time, we'll go with presentation and by Planning and Development staff.
Mr. Chair, at this time, I would ask that the board accept Ms. Ellen Crandall as an expert in general planning, zoning, annexations, land use rezoning, amendments, comprehensive planning, site plan analysis, and land development code amendments, special area plans and overlay districts, site plan review, tree rating assessment / inventory, tree preservation techniques, erosion and sediment control for construction, Florida grades and standards for landscape material and trees, International Society of Arboricultural Standards. Quite a list.
Yeah. Do I have a motion?
Move to accept Ms. Crandall as an expert witness for the purposes stated. So.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Please.
At this time, I'd also like to introduce David Ojeda from our engineering department, since there are questions related to traffic, if I may.
Mr. Chair, at this time, I would also ask that you accept Mr. David Ojeda as an expert in civil engineering, land development, utilities, construction and building permits, stormwater, FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency floodplain regulations.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Kurt
Aye.
made the motion.
I'm sorry, I did, I think.
I move, we accept them.
I have a first, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So we'll go ahead.
Thank you.
Mr. Ojeda, do you also have expertise in traffic?
No, I'm an electrical engineer by training.
Please.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me with my mask on? I can take it off. Perfect. So I am Ellen Crandall, the Development Review Manager. I'm presenting on behalf of Mark Perry, who was the case planner who's unable to be here today. So the project before you is a collection of properties, and you read a lot of addresses, that encompass nearly an entire city block. It's also adjacent to the Pinellas Trail. Can we pull up the PowerPoint? So there's a subject property. The property has split zoning, meaning it has 2 different zoning districts. To the north is the commercial, shown in red. To the south is the downtown zoning district. And though it has different zoning, it has been designed as one cohesive project trying to balance those rules and regulations of 2 different zoning districts. So I want to note the commercial zoning district generally has 3 tiers of review. First is a minimum standard. If it's a permitted use and it meets all the development parameters, it goes straight to building permit. Then there are 2 levels of flexibility. So the portion in the commercial zoning district is being processed as a level 2 before you today due to height and setbacks. Part of those setbacks are also to try and make it a unified project with downtown. So the downtown zoning district is significantly different, and it regulates by street types and then by consistent frontage types. The project has all street type E, which is consistent with neighborhood infill frontage. As such, the downtown portion of the project is only permitted residential uses. The downtown portion of the project is also requesting 3 dwelling units from the Public Amenities Incentive Pool, which was established to incentivize certain uses and types of development in the downtown. And this includes residential uses. So overall, the project is for a mixed-use project, but in the downtown, it is residential only. In the commercial, it is ground-level commercial with residential above. The proposal includes significant site improvements with landscaping and hardscaping. Trail amenities are proposed along the east frontage near the Pinellas Trail. And these are the proposed elevations. The height in the commercial district is proposed at 55 feet, and the height in the downtown district is proposed at 45 feet. So I'm just going to scroll through the elevations. This is the southeast corner. And here's the northeast and the center view along the trail. Let me know if I'm scrolling to them too quickly. And with that, I'm happy to try and answer any questions.
Ms. Crandall, has traffic been analyzed as a part of this project?
Correct. So the way that our engineering reviews function and kind of, oh, you want,
Are you okay to have the applicant come forward at this time, Jay?
Yeah, I would restrict our questions now to city staff and then
Yeah,
we can ask questions of the applicant.
well, let me,
That'd be appropriate first.
sure. So let me give you a quick overview because you asked, David specifically. So our engineering department has multiple divisions. There's stormwater, there's traffic engineering, there's general engineering, there's environmental. So with each of those, there is a specific technical reviewer. However, there's generally one point person who kind of coordinates with each of those specific technical reviewers, manages their comments, and gets to go to all the meetings. And that person is David, which is why he's here today.
Okay.
So it has been reviewed by a specific traffic person in the engineering department.
Okay.
Just a question, because I looked at, I should have called you on the phone for that. What kind of commercial do they envision on the trail? Do they give you any, it does not required for the approval, but I was just curious what type of commercial on the ground floor. It's a fabulous project, I thought. But.
I mean, I think that's better directed to the applicant. I mean, because at this time, we're just looking at
Yeah,
Setback.
okay, I did.
general commercial. Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to have some amenities on the trail.
That's fine. All right, we're good.
Any other questions?
We'll have the presentation at this time by the applicant.
Good afternoon, Robert Pergolizzi, AICP planner and professional transportation planner with Gulf Coast Consulting, 13825 Icot Boulevard, Suite 605 in Clearwater. And I've been sworn and I've been recognized as an expert before this board for 10, 12 years. I want to address traffic. We did do a traffic assessment. It was submitted with the application. This project would generate 344 daily trips, only 30 during the AM peak hour, and only 34 during the PM peak hour. According to city code, anything generating less than 51 peak hour trips does not do a detailed traffic analysis. The traffic assessment is what is accepted by the city. The closest regulated roadway is Myrtle Avenue, which between Drew and Fairmont Street operates at level of service C, carrying about 12,500 vehicles a day with a fairly low volume to capacity ratio of 0.36. And that's from the Forward Pinellas level of service report, which they produce annually. To answer your question, Mr. Flannery, what we envision on the ground floor are individual offices and maybe some type of trail-related use that would cater to people that are using the trail. It's an amenity that's right nearby, and we look to take advantage of that.
Thank you.
Would a bar or restaurant be part of that?
I don't know about a restaurant, maybe like a shop that might sell non-alcoholic drinks to trail users. Snacks. Happy to answer any other questions. Trail mix, yeah.
And is this apartments or just a condo?
Excuse me?
Is this an apartment complex or?
For sale, residential condominiums, townhomes. We have direct access to the surrounding streets like the downtown code requires. We're real excited about this project, and the owner's making a heck of an investment in this area, and we look forward to it. Thank you.
Do you have any cross-examination by planning at this time? Cross-examination, there's none. Of witnesses, by the applicant. At this time, it's open for comments by the public, 3 minutes. This would be the time that you would come forward if you have something to, at 3 minutes, yep. Just please state your name and
I'm sorry, you
spell.
weren't sworn.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You swear affirm the testimony about to give us the entire truth.
It is.
Thank you.
Please,
My name is Sheila Manicki, and I,
Spell your last name, please.
Maneckke. I live on Palm Bluff.
Step forward so your voice.
Cute little 1925 bungalow. It's adorable. Anyway, my concern is that with the traffic study, the consideration of Blanche B. Littlejohn Road is basically a single car road. And it's not a passable road really at the width, so that's a concern. Also, our roads up that way, North Garden at a certain point gets narrower. We're part of the original street system in Clearwater, so we're narrow up that way. And so I think that needs to be taken into account. It's not just a study of how many cars go by. It really we need to take a look at how wide these roads are and how you're gonna accommodate said traffic on it. That's my main concern. I wish I had more questions to ask you. I came here for more information, but number one is the width of the roads. They're about as wide as the trail itself, so please take a look at that. Thank you.
closing remarks by Planning Department? Closing remarks by the applicant? Sure. Yeah.
On our eastern boundary between the property and the trail is Blanche B. Littlejohn, also known as Railroad Avenue. There is a condition of approval. It is a very narrow one-lane street. The fire department noted that during their review, and we have a condition of approval that we need to widen it to meet fire department standards, and that will be done.
Okay.
Thank you.
At this time, we will close the public hearing. Any discussion and vote by the board? Anybody have any discussion on the side? Anybody? At this time, we'll take a vote by the board. If I have a motion,
I move we approve.
Oh, you need to read
you need to read the,
Someone else reads.
to level 2.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve case number FLD 2021-12023 based on the evidence and testimony presented in the application, the staff report at today's hearing, and hereby make the following findings of fact based on said evidence.
Mr. Director, you're free to adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law stated in the staff report,
Yeah, I see it here, yeah.
unless there are additionally like that.
Yeah, I see it here. Based on the testimony presented in the application, staff report at today's hearing, and hereby adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of the law stated in the staff report with the conditions of approval as listed.
Do I have a second?
Second that.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? Okay. Our next level 2 application is item number 1, case FLD 2022-02007 at 873 Harbor Island. The owner is Ian P. Snyder and Aaron J. Snyder. The applicant is Greg Presby, Dual and Associates. The location is .263 acres located on the east side of Harbor Island, approximately 200 feet south of the northern terminus of Harbor Island. The board is reviewing a proposed 484 square foot dock as accessory to a proposed single-family home in the low-medium density residential Island Estates Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District for the property located at 873 Harbor Island. The project is 82 feet in length and requests allowable flexibility for length. Is there anyone on this case requesting party status? Please come forward, state your name. And were you given notice of this?
No, sir, I'm an agent for the Parsees, who are the abutting neighbor at 879 Harbor Isle. They are the abutting neighbor and received notice, and again, I'm acting as an agent for them today.
Need to give your name? Your name?
Oh, I'm sorry, Todd Pressman, 202nd Avenue South, number 451, St. Petersburg, Florida.
Do I have a motion to grant Mr. Cressman party status?
I motion to grant Mr. Preston party status.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, with great liberty, as I'm working with the Parsees and indirectly with a large number of neighbors, if I may, please request to speak first in opposition.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Is there anybody else wishing party status?
My name is Mark Belfilio. I live at 867 Harbor Island.
I need you to spell your last name, please.
E as in boy, E as in Edward, B-E-L-L, B-E-L-F-I-G-L-I-O.
Thank you.
So I live I have the adjacent property that I own, 867 Harbor Island, which is south of the parcel.
Were you given a notice on today's hearing? Were you mailed a notice or
I
anything?
was, yes.
Do I have a motion? Grant party status?
I move we grant him party status.
Second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Please.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Come forward.
I'm Connor Belfilio, B-E-L-F-I-G-L-I-O. I'm also a resident at 867 Harbor Island.
Because same address, it doesn't mean it's right.
Are you a property owner of that property?
No,
Pardon?
Is that your dad?
I'm a resident at the,
I understand that's your dad, though.
yes.
The board's discretion,
Okay.
you're either way.
Do I have a motion to grant Connor?
I move we grant him party status.
Second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Anybody else? Okay. Oh, there's one more.
My name is Victor Jeptic, that's J-E-V-T-I-C. And I live in Allen Estates. My parents live directly across the street. I'm not sure if I would qualify as party status. I can speak on their behalf. But I personally do not live within the allotted distance.
So you weren't given an official notice, but you live on Island Estates?
Well, they were given an official notice, and I have it with me.
Did they give you any kind of authorization?
Whatever you want to
He's
do.
their agent, yeah.
Yeah, but
The
usually,
board in the past has
Approved.
typically authorized agents according to.
Are you acting as your parents' agent
Yes, I am.
today?
do I have a motion?
I move we grant party status.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Please.
Thank you.
That's it, we'll call you up. Is there anyone else looking for party status?
My name is Gus Pantelides. You can spell that, can't you? P as in Peter, A, N as in Nancy, T as in Tom, E, L, I, D as in David, E, S. I live at 757 Harbor Island, and I'd like to speak today at some point, if I could. And I live on the open water side where the proposed dock is going to be placed, and
So just,
Chairman, it may be a good idea to clarify the
Yeah.
distinction as between party status and those who wish to comment as a
so
member of the public.
everyone has an opportunity to speak today. Everybody will have, that wants to speak can speak today and have 3 minutes
so we
to
don't
speak.
have to get up.
You don't have to get up here now to do that, but if you
Oh.
want party status is something that, what I read, that it gives you different,
I thought we had to come up and register.
that'll be at that time, so if it's not, okay, so you're wishing to not have that, right? Okay, so, is there anyone else wishing party status, so to speak? Everybody will have an opportunity to speak that wants to speak on the matter, whether or not you have party status or not, so, Again, is there anyone else at this time? Okay. So, and the board has granted party status to, as agent, Todd Cressman, Mark Baffiglio, Connor Baffiglio, and Victor Benthic for this case. The granting of party status entitles you to these additional rights: personally testify, present evidence of documentary submittal, present witnesses, conduct cross-examination of any witnesses, present argument, appeal the decision of the board to a hearing officer or to the circuit court. We'll now begin, we read this case, right? I can't remember. We'll now begin with the presentation by Planning and Development and staff. 10 minutes.
Mr. Chair, at this time, I'd ask that the board accept Ms. Melissa Hawk Baker as an expert in general planning, zoning, redevelopment planning, land development code, and land development code amendments, special area plans and overlay districts, site plan review, landscape architecture, historic preservation, comprehensive sign programs, and all other matters that she is about to testify upon.
I have a motion.
Chairman, I move we accept Ms. Hawk Baker as an expert witness for the purposes just stated.
Second. Second. All those.
Next up, Mr. Chair, I would like to have the board recognize Mr. David Ojeda as an expert in civil engineering, land development, utilities, construction, and building experts, stormwater, FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency floodplain regulations, and all other matters that he is about to testify upon.
Do I have a motion?
I motion that Mr. Ojeda be granted.
Second. Anybody? Second.
And finally, I would ask that the board accept Mr. Eric Gandy, our city's Marine and Aviation Director, as an expert in marina operations, city dock requirements and standards, marine project review and analysis, and all other matters that he is about to testify on.
Move that we accept Mr. Gandy as an expert witness for the purposes stated.
Second.
We'll do this on a single vote to approve all three as expert witnesses. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, please proceed.
Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Houck Baker. I am a senior planner in the Planning and Development Department. I am here on behalf of Mark Perry, who is the case planner for case FLD 2022-02007 for the property located at 873 Harbor Island. I do have slides. I think I did everything correct, and it's not. Thank you. Okay, so yes, the site is 873 Harbor Island. It's a 2.263 acre piece of land. It's located on the east side of Harbor Island, about 200 feet south of the terminus of Harbor Island. And the zoning district is the Island Estates Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District of the low medium density residential zoning district with the future land use of residential urban. And it is surrounded by detached single-family homes. To the north, the west, and the south, and to the east is the waterway that is Clearwater Harbor. The proposed application is for an accessory dock use, and while this is being reviewed by the City of Clearwater, the issuing entity for all dock permits is Pinellas County Marine and Navigation, and as a requirement, all applications that go before them must first go to the local jurisdiction for approval, and once they get local jurisdiction approval, then the application moves on to Pinellas County. But Pinellas County is the ultimate issuing entity for all dock permits. Our code covers docks under section 3-601, subsection C, and that's the Community Development Code. And for a property such as this, the size of the dock is initially based on the waterfront property length. This property features 84.5 feet of waterfront property length, and the proposed dock is exceeding the by right permitted length. So the by right permitted length is 50% of the property length. That is, everybody gets that all day long. Then the code also provides for levels of deviation, which may be requested. The first level of deviation would be as a level 1 planning application, and that would be for an additional 50% length on top of the by right length. So that would get them to 63.38 feet in length. The dilemma with this site is that the property was surveyed and there are environmentally sensitive seagrass beds which extend 40 feet out from the seawall, which then provides for an issue with, traversing that area with a boat, stirring up or damaging the seagrass beds. And so the code also provides for the second level of deviation, which is why this is a level 2 planning application. And the dock may be extended for certain reasons, and one of those reasons is to avoid environmentally sensitive areas. So with that said, the environmentally sensitive seagrass extends 40 feet from the seawall. You take that 40 feet and you add the by right length, and you come up with the 82 feet of what the applicant is proposing. The code also does allow for tie poles. Tie poles may extend up to 18 feet from, up to an additional 50% beyond the dock of 50 feet. So I'm mincing words, but essentially they would be allowed by the code to put tie poles out up to 50 feet beyond the end of wherever the dock would be. So they're proposing to have them at 18 feet beyond where the dock will end. The proposal actually supports both the comprehensive plan as well as the code. The comprehensive plan includes in it the conservation element, which specifically states that the city is vested in protecting environmentally sensitive areas. So the proposal is supportive of the code as written, with the environmental seagrass beds as the main reason for the deviation in the length, and it also supports the comprehensive plan. The other staff members that are here are able to assist with answering other specific technical questions, but I'm happy to answer any other planning-related questions. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. I just have one, just to make sure with the numbers that you were just saying.
Yes. So the dock will be 82 feet in
Right,
length.
but the by right still, they're not asking for an additional on top. The 42.25 feet, so to speak, was the by right length. That is in
Correct,
addition
right.
to going beyond the seagrass.
Right, the justification is because of the seagrass.
And code has it that they can go with the tide poles 50% of that 42, another 21 feet.
They
Is
can
it
go
right?
up to 50 feet beyond the
50
end of a
feet.
dock.
I thought it was 50%.
Yeah, and
50
that
feet.
is,
And they're-
anything that's, any dock that would be proposed
Yeah, and they're
gets
going-
that. That's by right. That's
Right.
listed, that's not in the deviation section
And
of the
they're-
dock
And
code.
they're requesting 18 feet.
And they're requesting 18
Okay,
feet.
thank you for that clarification.
Mhm.
Yep.
I have a question. The documents we got state that the grass tapers off completely after 30 feet.
So I think the applicant will further clarify that, because while there are, I didn't actually do the survey, but that is something the applicant will attest to, of how they did the survey and exactly where the seagrass beds extend to.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't
Thank
get
you.
the question. Yeah, the board represent where?
Yeah, we just need to lean forward.
Oh, sorry.
He was just asking about the seagrass and where it stops and starts, and the applicant's going to need to address that,
Thank you.
right?
Yes.
Yes, I want to
Yes.
make sure I have enough opportunity during this discussion and not miss my chance to just talk about the seagrass, because my neighbor just put in a dock, and we have seagrass, and he has a 30-foot boat, and he didn't seem to go out, and I wouldn't have allowed it. But I'm just saying, I would like to, seagrass has been I've lived in my same location for 45 years, and the seagrass comes and goes. So I'd like to, when the time comes up, I'd like to discuss that. Maybe not right now.
Absolutely.
We'll have time for questions and everything before closing discussion. Yeah, to ask questions, I'll make sure. Thank you. And now the applicant, please. Opening.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Before I start my time, Brian Ungst, 625 Court Street, on behalf of the applicants Aaron and Ian Snyder, who are looking forward to relocating here from North Carolina and looking forward to getting the benefit of using their property per the law. Before we get started, I'd like to certify 2 expert witnesses. I did provide you with a packet of information, so everything that we're going to be showing on the overhead is also in front of you today, including the resume of Mr. Al Carrier, PE and PSM. He's a civil engineer. I'd like to certify him as an expert in civil engineering and environmental engineering issues and any other topic that he's going to testify about today.
Do I have a motion? Anybody?
Motion that he be accepted.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None.
Secondly, we have Mr. Roger Menendez. Mr. Menendez is a certified ecologist. He did do the survey of the seagrasses that we'll be addressing and can answer further questions about. And he's also an AICP planner, so I'd like to have him certified in the areas of environmental sciences, ecology, and in planning. And his resume is also before you.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None?
Florida, registered in Florida.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay. Mr. Chairman, again, Brian Ung, 625 Court Street, on behalf of the applicant, the Snyders. This case, while we're here and there's passion on the other side of this case is really straightforward. It's all about following the law. The law as it exists today, not as it existed 20 years ago, not as what we would like it to say, but what we're required to do. This is not a case where you have a hotel asking for flexibility to go from 50 feet in height to 100 feet in height, and we have to go through a bunch of flexibility criteria. This is a case where the law mandates and dictates that if we want to use our property for a dock, we want to build a new dock, that we have to build it this way. We are not asking for anything more than what we are required to ask for. And that's not just a City of Clearwater requirement, it's a Pinellas County Water and Navigation requirement. They will not permit a dock that impacts seagrasses. And they have a very liberal interpretation of what impacting seagrasses is. We also have to have potential review by the FDEP, and sometimes you have review by the Army Corps. So this is going to be a multi-step development review process. This is not a request of convenience. My client is not asking for anything more than it's required to ask for. And I want to make that very clear. This is the seagrass study that shows the 40 feet of impacted seagrass area. Mr. Menendez will testify more about that in a moment. I think there's also a misconception. A lot of the docks that, I think that the opposition is going to compare us to are non-conforming. About 60% of the docks in Island Estates are non-conforming. That means that if you wanted to create a brand new dock at that house, you would have to lengthen the dock. That's per the comprehensive plan, and that's also per the law. I put the code section in front of you because I want you to have it at your ready. The docks can go up to 250 feet, okay, under the code. They can go up to 250 feet. And as Ms. Hawk-Baker said, what we're asking for is, by right, 42 feet from the 40 feet that Pinellas County and FDP is going to require us to start at. I'm going to now also show you, in this area, 849 Harbor Island and 843 Harbor Island, 4 houses and 5 houses down, they have a 76-foot dock and a 73-foot dock, and you can also see tie poles throughout this area. So the idea that this is going to be some Pier 60 monstrosity, this is the site, this is all open water, this is going to be some Pier 60 monstrosity is just really not true, and it's inaccurate. So at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Menendez to testify briefly, and then we'll have Mr. Carrier testify. This is all in your packet as well.
All right.
All these papers.
Thank you, Brian. So basically, not only does Pinellas County Water Navigation have to approve the dock and have to approve whatever impacts are going to occur to the seagrasses, the FDEP, which is now in hand with the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, are the lead agencies for the management of Florida's seagrasses. So not only do they look at the seagrasses, but they're also going to look at the animals, the habitats that are in those seagrasses and how they may be impacted. So when you're going to do dock permitting, you're going to have to determine if there's the presence of seagrasses, and if there are going to be seagrasses and other natural resources, you're going to have to do a benthic or seagrass survey. So how do we do this benthic or seagrass survey? So we start at the seawall, and every 10 feet, every 10 feet, we use a quadrant, a meter square quadrant, and we determine the percent coverage of seagrasses in that square meter. Now, why this? The reason we do this is an accepted mode by ecology, by the agencies, by academics. That's what's done, okay? So we started at the seawall, and we went out toward the channel. And so right up against the seawall, the seagrasses aren't really all that thick, but they're there. But as you move away, they come in, and they're anywhere from 65 to 70% coverage. It's very lush, okay? When you get to 40 feet, it starts to fade out. And once you get to 41, 42 feet, the seagrasses go away. Now, why is this the case? The reason this is the case is because Al's going to show you in a minute the depth. Once you get to a certain depth, the seagrasses start to peter out. The reason they do that is for multiple reasons. First of all, there's less light, there's turbidity, there's potential impact to them, so they're not happy there. And so closer, 40 feet, where it's shallower, they're happy there, they're going to be lush, they're going to grow, and it's going to be good. So if you look at this document right here, you'll see that at the 30 feet, it's about 70% coverage. Once you get past 30 feet, it starts to fade away, and once you get past 40 feet, they go away. And at just past 40 feet, there's a drop-off in the depth.
Hello, Al Carrier. I want to reiterate that we're not asking for any additional setbacks from the neighbors, any variances. When we did the original design, we tried to minimize the impact on the environment and impact on the neighbors. As you can see, the dock itself is well within the side setbacks. We have a minimum 4-foot wide walkout to a dock head that's 22 by 10. It's fairly small for this style of dock. I want to also mention we're not asking for catwalks. We're not asking for roofs over the structures. We want to try and make it as simple as we can, but keep a usable structure. This next slide I wanted to show and demonstrate that from the seawall to the shoal, it's approximately 1,100 feet. And then there's a series of 3 markers, buoys that are out there. On those buoys, they're slow, tell people boating to slow down between the markers in the seawall that is slow wake minimum zone. So the markers there are for slow speed minimum wake. The aerial shows the dock size relative to the other docks that are out in that area, and then it also shows that you have 275 feet to navigate between the seawall and those buoys.
How many feet?
Approximately 275 feet between the seawall and the buoys. The overall channel width through there to the shoal is 1,100 feet. This is a little difficult to see, but I wanted to show that we did bathymetry. We got grade elevations of the seafloor from the seawall out past those channel markers. And once you get past the seagrass, it's a pretty constant 6 foot of depth measured at mean low tide. So at mean low tide, you're going to have a constant depth of about 6 feet from the seagrass out past those buoys. And the last slide I have for you here kind of shows there's multiple docks throughout the city of Clearwater. On Bay Esplanade, there's docks that are 90 feet, and the tide poles reach out to 110 feet. On Sunset in Osceola, you can see some docks that are out there 270 feet. Most of them average about 200 feet. Every site's different. The reason why you have to lengthen a dock is because DEP in Pinellas County is not going to let you impact the seagrasses or the seabed. So it's imperative that wherever your boat moors, at low tide, it's not banging the bottom and you're not covering seagrasses.
Yeah, real briefly, can you explain Mr. Flannery's question about why a non-conforming existing legally established dock could be rebuilt in its current footprint and be allowed to affect the seagrasses, whereas why what we're doing, building a new dock, is not allowed to affect the seagrasses?
So if the dock is historic and it's been there, you have the right to rebuild the dock in the same footprint that it sits at. If you want to modify that dock, then any impacts to seagrasses would be looked at by the city and by DEP and by Pinellas County. In this particular case, they have a small stamp-sized dock that's, I think, 8 by 8. It's not going to meet their needs. They can't moor a boat there. So they're going to remove that dock, and now it triggers them to meet the new conditions. So they now have to avoid any seagrass impacts.
Thank you, Al.
Okay, may I ask a question?
Mr. Flannery, I'm sorry, we're almost out of our time, so please do, but I have 30 seconds, so I'd like to use it. I just want to reiterate that what we're asking for is the absolute minimum we're required to ask for. We don't want to be here at a public hearing having neighbors upset at us. My clients are moving into the community. They reached out to their adjoining neighbors several months ago about this. They understood that their neighbors would be objecting to it and that this is the process. But what I want you to remember is we're following the law. The law as it's written today requires us to be 40 feet from the seawall, and then we're entitled to that 42 feet from there as of right. We're following the rules, we're following the law, and that's what this board is here to do as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're happy to answer any questions you have.
So although it's considered flexibility under our code, under certain state and county requirements, it's not flexibility at all, it's mandatory. Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct.
So I have any questions now?
You can ask a question.
So I did see, can you put up the drawing again with the dock?
I'd just like to ask, can you make sure that y'all are leaning forward to your microphone so we can ensure that everyone can hear you? Thank you.
Could you, put up the one, the long one, the overview? Yeah, that's good.
That one?
Yeah, turn it,
There you go.
yeah, so the water wouldn't run out of it.
I've been told that several times, and I'm not.
Yeah, got it.
I do it all the time.
First of all, you're putting in a big boat lift, real big boat lift.
Correct.
And how long of a boat could that lift up? 30, 40? My neighbor's is 45.
This boat is 50 feet. It's a sport fishing boat.
So it's a 450 boat, so this is what everyone's going to
50-foot
look
sport
at.
fishing boat that they
So
own.
it doesn't matter how nice the dock is, you're going to see the giant boat sitting in a 50-foot boat. That's correct?
That's correct.
So everyone with north and south of there now have a beautiful view of this 50-foot boat. I just want to make clear that that's what we're looking at here.
Yes.
I also just need to put on the record, under Florida law, this board is not allowed to consider impacts on views over adjoining properties. So under Florida law, it's very well established, the Fountain Blue case from the 70s, that a property owner is not entitled to a view over their neighbor's property. And there are other docks in this vicinity, just a couple doors down, that have basically the same length.
And only over your view of the water from your property.
Correct.
And are they, could they use their existing dock? I mean, what's wrong with their existing dock now?
Their existing dock, if you look on the drawing here, you'll see this little white area. That's their existing dock now. There's no seagrasses under it because it's been shading the seafloor for a number of years. But there's no way to manipulate that dock or put a lift anywhere in this area, because once you do that, then the boat will be shading the seagrasses, and then you can have more seagrass die-off.
May I ask the seagrass expert a question?
Yes, sir.
So if I remember right, many years ago, we didn't have hardly any seagrass.
That's correct.
In fact, it's a variable thing. The cleaner the water, the more seagrass.
That's correct.
So at some point, the seagrass may go out farther and farther.
To a certain amount, because they're still limited by the physical conditions of the site.
And at this point, is it been a depth question or a turbidity question?
I think it's a depth and turbidity, because as you go deeper, you're gonna get more turbidity, and therefore, it's almost one and the same.
So,
For instance, I'm sorry, sir, if it didn't go down, if it was flat and it stayed at 4 feet, there'd be seagrasses all the way to the channel.
that's funny. And so it's just a issue of, I mean, it could go on and on and on. We could have the next person come in and say, we want 120 foot, as long as they don't get into the waterway, couldn't we? The next person on next door could find a different seagrass expert and have it go out farther.
I mean, no, not so much. I mean, if you look at the literature, if you talk to people from agencies, if you talk to academics, they're going to tell you that the water quality, the depth, and the turbidity are going to decide where the seagrasses are. There's also the issue with if they were to use that dock, if they were to replace that platform, what's going to happen is when they bring in their boat, they would prop dredge, basically dredge the bottom of the surface with their prop. And then whatever seagrasses are there, they're going to tear up, and they're going to make more turbidity, and even the seagrasses that aren't impacted by the prop, they might die off because of the increased turbidity in that area.
Do they have, maybe I could ask our council, do they have a right to change their dock? Is that something that they have a given right to do, or is that because they want to do it? I mean, are they entitled to have a dock on that property, do you know? Is there any way to ask that question?
The city's code allows for it, of course.
And of the length, of the size and of any size and length that they have?
The length of the dock that they're requesting is governed by the section of the code that's been cited, which is 3-601. And particularly, you're looking at section G3, and you have 5 criteria to apply, right? You've seen those.
I sort of lost that
The
sheet.
discussion that was just had, to me, and I want to sort of guide the board back to the criteria that you're looking at. The water quality, the natural resources, the wetlands, habitats, and the marine environment are what you're assessing, but only as in relation to the dock, not in relation to the boat. So whether the boat may cause, I forget what you called it, propeller dredging, is not an issue for you. It's a function of the dock itself. If the dock itself, of lesser length, poses a threat to the marine environment, natural resources, wetland habitats, or water quality, then a criteria A has been met. There are 4 others that you'll need to consider. But yes, the application itself is appropriate.
And I understand we can only decide upon what our powers are here. I understand that. I just do, I'm thinking very heavily of neighbors who are going to be suffering from this. I guess the answer is every one of them goes out to 84 feet. And it's what happens. That's what I'm looking at doing now. Not 84, but now that I can know I put pilings out there, I'm all set. I put pilings out there, stop those jet skiers go by, put a wile between the two, and kind of save some manatees while I'm at it.
Let's go on, and we'll get back to some more questions. All right, thank you. Oh, did you? I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And actually, maybe your question. What changed between the documents that we received that said the grasses were at 30 feet and this new document now says?
The typo. We had two different of these graphics, and we corrected.
So this chart is no longer good either?
No, that chart is good. What does it say at 40 feet?
Well, it's hard, it doesn't, just gives me the depth and percentage. It doesn't give me a distance. It just talks about quadrant numbers, and because you don't,
Well, quadrant number 4 would be 40 feet,
okay.
because each one's 10 feet.
So at 30 feet, it's 75%, then it drops to 15% at 40. So you still consider that grass, I guess, right?
Right at 40, it's gonna be at 15, and then you go down you go out a couple more feet, and it basically just fades out.
So may I ask one last question to our council, if I might? So if this is all in law, why are it being considered by the board? What is our choice to decide here? I mean, if it's all by law, there's nothing we can do about it. Why are they here?
Length? That's why you're
I mean,
here.
if we can't cut the length, then why are we hearing it?
I agree with you. You're asking questions, I don't know if, my impression of this at this juncture is this. My question is, the applicant has told us that they have a certain as-of-right entitlement to length. Then they're going to add the variance on top of it. I don't know that that may be a portion of the city's code that I'm not independently familiar with.
When we
Maybe someone can enlighten me on it.
city back up here.
But when you discuss variance, you're really discussing the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, right? So if, in this case, and I don't know if Pinellas County has told the applicant something different. Maybe Pinellas County may have told the applicant that you must go to 82 feet or we will not approve it. But I think that it's perfectly permissible for this board to inquire as to whether 70 feet may work, as to whether 60 feet may work, unless there was a portion of the code that says you get the entitlement plus the variance length, which, and I've not seen that before.
Point of clarification.
If your entitlement is, whatever your entitlement is X, it's X plus that you're really determining.
Right.
In terms of a variance. What is the appropriate addition to X that makes it possible for the applicant to use the land?
Can the orientation of the boat be changed?
That would be the applicant's determination, sure. I don't know, the depth out there looks pretty consistent, but perhaps.
So I think I need to respond to Mr. Flannery. This application was reviewed by the city's environmental department as part of all the disciplines that review the application. And if you look at the staff report, the city's environmental department said in the staff report that this application was supportable and was the minimum necessary to protect the marine life and the seagrasses that were being impacted as per the survey. This is the first step. Once we get a development order here, hopefully, we will move on to Pinellas County. We know from experience that Pinellas County will not allow us to impact the marine life and the seagrasses, and Pinellas County is going to be looking at the exact same survey that you've been provided. And Mr. Carrier can tell you, and I'll have him tell you in a second, he's actually gotten approvals before from the local government, and then the county came back and said, no, you got to lengthen it. So the risk is if you cut it down to 70 feet or you say, well, we're just going to make it 70 feet because we don't think the seagrasses really go that much farther than 30 feet. Well, then Water and Navigation and Kelly Hammer Levy are going to look at it, and they're going to say, no, that was wrong. You got to go back to the CDB and reapply all over again and get that extra 10 feet, or we're not going to give you your dock. Al, can you address that?
Everything he says is correct. We just went through, for example, a dock that's 280 feet long in town of Bel Air. Got all the way through the process, got through their process, the municipal process, got through Pinellas County, got through FDEP, and Army Corps went out and swam and said, it's too short, need to go out. And we ended up putting another 78 feet on the end of a 280-foot dock. We had to go back through the whole process all over again, back through the municipality, back through Pinellas County to get their approvals. So it's not uncommon. We've done probably 150 to 200 of these docks. I don't like being here in front of you, so we always try to design the dock so we don't have to come back or have some sort of contention. But I believe with my experience, and Roger's experience, that we've designed a dock that we don't think is going to come back. We think we're going to be able to get it through Pinellas County and FDEP.
May I ask, and I'm still on track, I hope I'm not going off here. There are other properties you showed us on the aerial that are 74 feet out.
So I believe it's 76 and 73. At 849 and 843, those would be...
Three houses, 4 houses away.
This one would be better. Okay, this one's better. Okay, so here's our property
These two.
and our proposed dock. This one is 76 feet. You can see there's multiple boats there, and this one is 73 feet.
So,
There's a large boat here and a large boat here.
just so I have it in my vision here, the one that says 76 feet long dock, is that just about how long, this is going to be 84,
Ours is 82.
82. So if I were to visualize it on this property, it would look just about like that. Is that, am I clear on that?
It's
I mean, generally,
8 feet longer.
it wouldn't
Yeah.
be something really
About
different.
it's about 8 feet longer than that dock.
Are there poles on the end of the other?
There are poles throughout this channel here.
Well, I mean, on the end of that particular dock.
Let's see,
I
this
don't
would
believe
be,
so.
I don't think so on that dock.
So really, it stops at 76 feet. Yours with the poles are going to be 100?
I had a better picture of the poles, but I think I put it away somewhere. There are poles that go out to 70 feet on the neighboring property, is that right, Al?
Yes.
Okay, maybe talk about that.
So yours will be another 30 odd feet more.
Correct. There is, like I mentioned, on this dock here, 2 doors down, there's tie poles that stick out 72 feet from the dock. That dock was just reconstructed, I think, within a year or two. I do have the permit here if you want to see it from Pinellas County. The tie poles were existing. The homeowner opted to leave the tie poles and redo his dock, but he left the tie poles out at approximately 72 feet.
I saw it was added that you're going to be putting some reflective tape because that was another concern about the safety at night.
Yes, so once we get through this process, we work with the city staff. They have requested we put like 3M tape, white tape on the piling, the most furthest out piling. I will add, as we go through the process, for instance, the decking from the seawall out to about 40 feet, maybe a little bit more, will be a grate material that will allow sunlight to penetrate through. That's normal, a normal requirement. Wrapping the piling for boreworms, that's another requirement that we always.
Requirement for lights or anything like that, right? Just because that's going to be the furthest out obstruction, I guess.
Typically, municipalities, Pinellas County, don't want lights on piling that stick out that far. They'd rather have the reflective tape and have it maintained.
And you said there was 275 feet to the line of the no wake zone?
Yes.
And that was from the bulkhead to the line, right?
Yep. Is that?
So this will cut out whatever 100 feet of it, so it'll still be 175 feet to that. So.
Correct. And that is a slow minimum wake zone from the seawall out to 275 feet.
This is a manatee protection zone.
All of Pinellas County is a manatee protection zone.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to.
That's not what we're talking about, of course, I don't mean that.
Yes.
Never mind, I'll go on.
I know what you mean.
They go by my house at 40 miles an hour, and the manatees are right there, but.
This area, no, not to my knowledge.
See what city council.
I just wanted to clarify the city's position on the code requirements for length. I was just speaking with Ms. Lauren Matsky about this, and our interpretation is you're allowed a certain amount of length by right under our code without having to go through a level 1 approval process or greater. And then if you want more length, which is the case here, then you have to apply for flexibility. And the applicant is saying, for the record, that they understand that this is a flexibility application, but they are saying that the state and county requirements are more stringent than ours and actually require them to go out further than what is typically allowed under our length that you could ask for without flexibility. Is that correct, Mr. Ongst?
I don't want to confuse the issue too much. I mean, bottom line, I've given you the code section. The code section says, as a right, you get 50% of your waterfront width, which in our case is 84 feet, so that's 42 feet. What we've also said is that in the flexibility section of your code, you can exceed that by right length with a level 1 or a level 2, and if you exceed it with a level 2, you have to establish the criteria that are in the code section that I provided you, which include that it's designed to minimize impacts on the environment and on the sciences, and on the seagrasses. And because that criteria is implicated not just by the city, but also by the county and also by FDEP, we have to do this survey that Mr. Menendez has discussed, and we have to provide it to the city. It's a requirement for the application. We have to provide it to the county. It's a requirement for the permit, and we have to run it by FDEP. And so, again, We've asked for the absolute minimum required flexibility, which is a property right under the code, if we meet, and you agree that we meet the criteria of approval. The criteria of approval are in that section that I provided you.
How did we reach the minimum, if you don't mind me asking? I'm just curious. How did we come up with 82 feet as the minimum?
Because we have to not impact or shade the seagrasses and that marine life. And so in order to do that, we have to use the 42 feet, which we would otherwise be required or allowed to have as a right. Is that?
That's kind of the argument, is that you are saying essentially, well, you would be able to have that first 42 feet as of right. And because the seagrass is in that area, you'd like an additional 42 through the flexibility, correct?
Additional 40 feet.
Yeah, additional 40, okay.
I kind of look at this.
Is that shade created by the dock or by the boat?
By both.
If I can interject something, kind of looking at this, and staff can correct me wrong, kind of bringing this down to sea level, mean sea level. When you're building a project, you have so many feet of elevation in your project, you could go to 20 feet, but it starts at the minimum base level for flood elevation, not mean sea, flood elevation on a piece of property. So if you start at 11.5 feet, that's where your elevation on your building starts from, even if your property's at 6 feet existing. Am I wrong there? Am I elaborating correctly, or am I doing it wrong? So if you have a piece of property that's at 6 foot of elevation, your building height, if your code says you can go to 20 feet, you're going from the 6 foot, you're going from minimum flood level first, and then going up 20 feet. So your building is ending up being 25.5 feet instead of 20 feet.
And I understand your analogy. I'm just not sure that that's exactly how
Transfers.
it's codified.
Okay.
So, but I do understand your analogy. I think to Matthew's point, the question was, how does it get determined? What is the minimum beyond that 40 feet?
Okay. Let's go on to presentation by persons with party status. We'll each have 5 minutes maximum, and we're going to start with Mr. Cressman.
Mr. Chairman, before I begin, I have required copies of a PowerPoint. How would you like me to distribute those? Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I do have a PowerPoint to walk you through. If we could pull that up, please. Again, my name is Todd Pressman. I'm here as an authorized agent for the Parsees, who are the abutting owner on the north. If I could draw your attention to the PowerPoint that I'm going to walk you through, please. Allowed dock, as I have, is 42.2, requesting 82 feet for the dock, much further out with the tie poles. I have that as a 94% variance requested from what's allowed at 42 to 82 feet, and then plus tie poles. So I see this, my math, this is a major variance. This is the site, and you can see that there is dock uniformity, and it is a question how you look at this. Now, these are our measurements. I'm sure they're going to differ a little bit, but you can see throughout the entire terminus that the status quo runs from about 30 to 40 feet. There is one at 71 feet. I have it at 71 feet. By my recollection, there's only 2 docks that have tie poles. This is controlled by the lot width, as we all know. Mr. Chairman, board members, Mr. Flannery had this. The most important piece of information is what you have not been told, nor has the staff been told. When you look at this dock, you have a 66,000-pound lift. That is an extraordinary super lift, which means a massive boat, in our opinion. What you're shown is a boat on the south side. But what you're not shown at all is the boat that's proposed on the other side. It's never been presented to the staff. It was not presented to you until Mr. Flannery asked that question. It's sort of like a magician who's performing a sleight of hand, in my opinion, who says, look over here with a flash, and does the trick behind his back. They have not shown that to you. They've not disclosed to you, and that is what, in our opinion, is driving this request. The owner has stated to a neighbor the boat is 50 feet. Mr. Ongst indicated that. So I say to you, where's the transparency? Where are all the facts? Where is the full disclosure the board and the city staff and the neighbors need? And our opinion is you haven't gotten it. This is our rendition per Google measurement. 81.9 feet plus 18 feet for tide poles, that's just under 100 feet. That's roughly 2.5 times the status quo of what's out there as I showed you. Let's talk about criteria, because the applicant barely did, in my opinion. Criteria number 1 is not in the harmony, scale, bulk, coverage, density, or character. Well, it's clearly not in the character, because by status quo I've shown you it's twice as long. Criteria number 2 will hinder or discourage appropriate development and use of adjacent land and buildings. This is going to be a major public safety issue. Let me tell you why. And you will hear this as facts from the neighbors who lived next to this site, very close, on how boat traffic occurs. Those are facts, and they will test to that. Because people take a shortcut on this terminus, as you can see here, both north and south, and they cut it close, and we have pictures and some videos to show you. The other thing it does is that a dock of this length will push human-powered craft further out into the channel, causing, in our opinion, more friction between those uses. The NOA chart here shows you that the deepest part of the channel is very close to the shore. So, as the neighbors will tell you, large boats come in close because of the depth of that channel. Here's a typical close approach. Here's a high-speed approach, another close approach. This is a large boat coming in at night, boat traffic, large boat traffic at night. This is another close approach. This is the human crafts being pushed out just by the current dock that's out there. So it does not meet criteria number 2, in our opinion, hinder or discourage appropriate development and use of adjacent lands and buildings. Will not meet criteria 3, adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing or working in the neighborhood of the proposed use. There's also Clearwater Code criteria, which is included in your staff report, the staff responds to. And Mr. Flannery, some other members started to ask this. What is the minimum deviation? What's the reasonable use? Well, by my math, it's a 94% variance. That's a darn big variance that you're thinking of approving. But the point comes back again is, how big is the boat? It's 50 feet. Clearly, a smaller boat could work. So it's not the minimum deviation, in our opinion, and it's not the reasonable use. Item B is, it would result in extreme hardship to the unique nature of project of the applicant's property. Again, what's driving this, in our opinion, is the size of that boat and does not meet these criteria. My understanding is you have to have a finding of all criteria. The 5 that are referred to and the others are referred in the staff report. So this will clearly be dangerous, unsafe, tragedy waiting to happen, in our opinion. The shortcut path, pushing of human boating outward. The uniformity of shorter docks coming around the top of the terminus creates a conception, in our opinion, of uniformity of close passage. Here's an example of a close and loud passage. This is on the dock next door.
Mr. Chairman, do you wish to commit additional time for Mr. President to finish his video?
If I may have 2 more minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Board. We grant 2 minutes then to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is another close approach coming through. Another close approach coming through, right past these are all taken from neighboring properties. This is a fast approach coming through. You can see the marker is way on the other side of the boat as people take that cut and curve coming in. That's the same fast approach. Jet ski coming in, fast approach. And another close approach.
So you don't like that these boats are in close?
What's that?
You don't like that these boats are in close?
I'm sorry, sir?
You don't like that these boats are in close to shore?
The neighbors, we asked, if I'm answering your question, the neighbors watched, as they do every day, on the boat traffic, and we brought forward to the board what they typically see from day to day.
Can't they just go around the dock?
I was just wondering, isn't the dock, something that would push them out more and not have them come close? I mean, how's the dock proposed to become a problem for that?
The difficulty is that there's a conception of status quo docks, which are much shorter, and now we're installing or potentially installing a much longer dock with tide poles out to 100 feet, which become a danger as it is then located in the way of or very close to typical boat traffic at this particular area and the lay of the land of this particular area.
You're gonna cut in close, and then all of a sudden there's an obtuse, longer dock that we're just not aware of. I
Yes, sir.
guess.
Would there be a sight obstruction for someone traveling in either direction because of the dock?
I'm sorry, sir?
Would there be an obstruction of sight of boats approaching from either direction because of a boat that's 50 feet long and up in the air?
If the boat's there, it's a larger element to see. The tide poles are further out than the boat. But clearly and certainly, and here's another fast and close approach. What's that, sir?
Opposing watercraft, they'd have to go out. They're supposed to be in the channel.
They have to go out, or it's going to create a more
Mr. Preston, are you an expert in marine law enforcement and safety?
No, our only presentation here are the facts and experience of the neighbors of how boat traffic occurs at this point.
No, the videos are fine, but how are you qualified to speak on this?
No, it's not. We're presenting facts of the experience of, again, the experience of the neighbors who have lived there for years and decades, of the traffic that comes in very close because of this particular lay of the land.
Okay, but you can't personally testify to the safety?
No, sir.
And you all haven't done any grassland studies of your own, right?
No, sir.
You do not, you have the funds to do some personal grassland studies of your own?
That's relevant.
I mean, this is the type of thing that citizens should be doing, spending what they cost to do, or should we expect that of our citizens to do these personal studies to prove all these things? I don't know.
A grass study was not done by the citizens.
I asked because you have the 30-foot grass dimension, that's why I'm asking the question.
Sorry, sir?
You have a 30-foot, in your presentation, you have a 30-foot grass dimension in one of your slides.
Well, my understanding is 40. I may have picked that up from the one slide that showed it as 30. Which slide is that, sir?
That one.
Oh, well, that was just taken from the applicant. Or the applicant on the online submittal by the applicant.
So you're not disputing that the seagrass goes to 40 feet?
We're not disputing the seagrass goes 40 feet. That's one story. The other story is how big is this boat, which has been, in our opinion, hidden from this board and hidden from the city and not disclosed. That's what's driving the variance. That's what's driving a significant variance. Because clearly, if it were a 40-foot boat, they wouldn't be asking for as much a variance.
Didn't the board attorney say we're not here for the boat, though? We're here for the dock. Am I understanding that correctly, or?
Yep.
You made a comment earlier about how we were here to review the dock and not the boats.
The criteria don't speak to the boat at all. The criteria speak to the dock itself, and that's it. That doesn't-
You'll have time for more questions.
Well, the criteria speaks to what's a minimum variance. What's pushing the applicant's variance is how large the boat is. They're presenting to you that it's strictly the seagrasses. But the simple fact of the matter is, if they had a 40-foot boat or a 30-foot boat, it would be much less variance, and that would be a minimum variance.
Didn't we
So it
have,
doesn't pass that criteria.
didn't we have a statement that if the dock is not functional at half the width of the property, they were allowed another half of that half as a standard?
Right. I think we can go back into that when we get staff back up here and do that stuff. I'd rather get through everybody's presentation, and then we're going to be reviewing everything 4 times.
I think that question's been clarified, but I
Yeah.
hear you. I would revisit that with staff.
Now, I will summarize by saying in the applicant's, in his application, they refer to putting the boat sideways, that it would work for them, which is kind of contradictory in my opinion, because they talk about how they have to have depth of the dock going all the way out, where bringing the boat in sideways evidently would be a way for them to go, which again, does not meet the criteria that I pointed out for the safe use and for minimum or reasonable use. So specifically by the criteria, we asked you to look at all the criteria, the 5 plus the city code criteria covered in the staff report, and they do not meet several of those in our opinion.
Mr. Pressman, you're not a certified land planner, right?
No, I'm not.
Well, I would think that one of our planners would probably be more aptly equipped to review the criteria in that case.
Our only interest is presenting facts to the board and having the board members make that determination.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next person with party status is Mark Bafiglio.
Yes. I do have a question. I didn't realize there was an overhead, so we made these boards.
It'll show up.
Will it pick them up?
Yeah, if you lay it down there on the table there, staff will help you. And if you would, state your name again. And
Sure. Mark Belfield, I just want to make sure I have my.
If you said it, Todd, she'll zoom out.
she'll do it.
So I live at 867 Harbor Island. Those old Boston whalers that were in the video, that's my backyard. And the people planning to build a dock came over on January 10th to my house and asked for the sign off, and I said, I don't feel comfortable doing it. So they said, well, we'll just put our 50-foot, they did say they had a 50-foot diesel sport fishing boat, new, they want to keep on a lift. They said, well, we'll put it sideways. I said, that's fine, but then they indicated they don't want to block their view. So let the record be said that they were very clear they didn't want to block their view, that's why they wanted to go out. And regarding the seagrass, I guess I'm a little confused because it has been 30 feet, 40 feet. I was there when they did the survey because they were in my yard, and I said, excuse me, what are you guys doing with your equipment in my yard? So they explained to me. But when you put the 50-foot boat on the lift, as they're describing, you're going to cover about 10 feet with that boat of the seagrass. So I'm getting confused here. It's a little contradiction that you're trying to save the seagrass, but you're putting a boat that's going to cover the seagrass over the distance. So I just wanted to plant that seed. Regarding, can you see that all right? Mm-hmm. So what we did, my son and I, we went around using Google Maps and sized the docks like many other people did. The important thing is, if you look at these points, these people, 43 feet, they have 166 feet of water frontage. Per the code, they can be out 80-some feet. Next house, Dan Barrett, 33 feet. He just redid his dock July of 2018. He has 151 feet. He could have gone out 75 feet. You know why he doesn't want to go out? And this is my opinion, I'm not speaking for him, because the liability of it. People whip around that corner, and you're going to get sued. I mean, it cracks me up. These people, if they build this dock, they should put a sign on it, sue me, because that's what's going to happen. So if you look at the next docks, 40 feet, 38 feet. Mine is actually 36 feet 9 inches, because I just measured it. And then you have a 100-foot structure. It's an 82-foot dock, but it has another slip, which I question. You read the city code, all the codes, 2 mooring places for a dock, for a boat. They have 2 lifts and they have a slip. I took my boater safety navigation in South Carolina. Maybe things are different in South Carolina than Florida, but when you have 8 pilings, that is called a boat slip, a wet slip. So that's 3 slips. So I'm confused why this has even gotten to where it is, because it makes no sense. You have boats, jet skis, everybody coming through there, and you're going to put an appendage that is farther, twice as far as everybody else's. So I did a little study, and I know I'm trying to move for the time here. On Sunday, I sat on my dock and I fished. But what did I do? I said, for an hour, I'm going to count boats. Fried in the sun a little bit, but I counted boats. 68 craft went past me in an hour. It's a very, very crowded area. And it is so hard to get video. Last Sunday night, there was a triple-engine boat. It blew past near the docks, flew one direction, and about an hour later, flies the other way. You have kids who paddleboard. You have kids with pontoon boats, their parents are pulling them in the no-wake zone. You are crowding this no-wake zone. You know what? We measured. Those buoys move on a daily basis. That 275 feet, come over to my house, because they're not 275 feet. Those buoys are 160 feet. My neighbor and I measured them. They move every day. They move with the currents. And you are crowding a no-wake zone. You're making it a hazard, a definite hazard to the people of the community. And if you look at the level, I'm not an attorney, I'm a businessman. The flexible standard, if it's detrimental to the public interest and welfare. And this is detrimental to the public interest and welfare. And I think the point that Todd was trying to make, the standard 42-foot that they're allowed. I'll do some Kentucky math. You want to put your boat on the lift this way. It doesn't fit. 50 feet is longer than they're allowed to have their dock out. So they are looking for far more than what the standard is. With that said, we have 81 signatures from the neighbors opposing this. You have a group of people could raise their hands that oppose it from the neighborhood.
They'll have the opportunity to speak if they wish to. Thank you,
But you're welcome. My point is, it's a liability, it's going to cause tragedy, and it's very self-focused. Look at the community, instead of you want to have your 50-foot boat in your backyard plus your 34-foot boat that they identified. So with that said, it's not if, it's when a tragedy is going to occur. And I think it's a liability for everyone in the community.
Thank you.
Finished 3 seconds early.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're going to submit the petitions.
Oh, sorry. Obviously, I don't do this very often.
You did well.
Thank you.
Our next party status, Connor Bafiglio.
Would you step one step forward, thank you.
State your name and
I'm Connor Belfolio. I'm a resident on Island Estates. I've lived on Island Estates and Harbor Island my whole life, almost 23 years now. I'm an active fisherman, paddleboarder, kayaker, and I do a lot of boating in the area. And one thing that everyone states that is common is this is a blind curve here, and you can't see when you're driving on a boat here, you can't see the boats way over here. And there's a lot of times the boats come head on with each other just the way this is. And then if there's a 100-foot dock here, imposing the view even more, you're not going to be able to see around what's coming around. And there's all people, I go on the kayak and paddleboard, and you hug the docks because of these big cruisers that turn up the waves, and you almost flip every single time. And now, with a 100-foot dock, you're forcing me and other slow-moving watercraft to go out 100 feet, out, and right here is where the big cruisers and everyone goes super fast. You're causing everyone to go right out close. And keep in mind, there are slow-moving boats that don't want to go fast out here that stay in the no-wake zone. So it's very congested here to begin with, and you're forcing it that now everyone's confined to this small area between the no-wake zone and the end of this 100-foot project.
So it looks like there's a no-wake zone that extends past the dock that people can paddleboard in?
Yes, but you have to go all the way out around. Normally, you hug the dock so you don't get ran over by a boat, literally.
But there's still a no-wake zone.
That's a no-wake zone all the way around there.
Yes.
The actual navigable waterway is far out beyond that no-wake zone. I don't know why everybody's tearing.
What's proposed and what people do are two different things.
So
If you sat out here and watched all the boats
Whole argument, isn't it?
cut the corner,
let him have his presentation, and then we can question him as time.
another thing is when the owners of this project first came to our house, they said that they were putting a graded walkway out to the dock, which their attorney mentioned, but nowhere in any of their information states that they're going to do the grading to save the seagrass. It states specifically in there that it's a composite decking all the way out, and then all their boats are going to hang over and cover the seagrass as well. So if they're really trying to save the seagrass, they would put their boats sideways instead of trying to put them, they put them parallel with the seawall instead of out all the way where they are. And if you look at the total their boat length, the lot is 84 feet. That's the same exact length of their boats combined. They have a 50-foot boat and they have a 34-foot boat that they're planning to put here, which is way too much boat for the property. No one on Island Estates has boats on this side of the street that are this long and this many boats. For the size of the lot, it's overkill. They could put a smaller boat, or even keep their bigger boat at a marina and keep their smaller boat here sideways, and everyone would be happy with it instead of going out 100 feet out into the waterway. And another thing that I'd like to address is everyone talks about these docks that are out here. Yeah, 73 feet or 76 or whatever people are saying they are, but these aren't at the point here. This is totally different here. Driving on a boat or any type of watercraft, you can see this, and it naturally pushes your way out. But right here around the curve, when you come around and it's a 100-foot dock, that's a major change from the 8-foot dock that's currently there. And I understand that they're trying to save the seagrass, but there are other ways of putting the boat sideways or not even going out as far. So that's my take on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Victor Vedic, if I have your name right.
Hi, my name is Victor Jeftik. I'm speaking on behalf of my mother, who owns a home virtually across the street at 866 Harbor Island. So I don't want to basically re-say some of there's a lot of good points made about safety, and I want to reiterate how dangerous this really is from a standpoint of people going around that corner, not expecting to see a 100-foot dock sticking out that far. I can't overstate how dangerous that is going to be if that's approved. One thing I do want to bring out that hasn't really been talked about, a lot of this discussion has been about the seagrass. And I don't know why that particular lot has that much seagrass. I would venture to think it's possibly because there's been no boating activity there at all for years. I can test that because I've been to that neighborhood constantly, almost on a daily basis. So there's no boating activity there. So that's possibly why the seagrass has developed to the extent that it has. So my comment would be, if all of a sudden you put a 50-foot boat in there, and there's two ways they can approach that lift. They can approach it basically going toward the seawall, and if they do that and they put it on the lift, the water's, I think one of the gentlemen stated that it's 6 foot deep there. A 50-foot boat has two large propellers. That is stirring up a lot of sediment that's being driven on that seagrass. So my question to one of the experts on seagrass is the likelihood that seagrass will survive with that much turbidity constantly being thrown at it in the future if the boat is actually moored there. The other approach would be for them to come in the other way. So the bow of the boat sticks out. If they do that, their propellers will be right in the seagrass. So I don't see any reasonable way that lift can be used without harming, if not destroying, the seagrass. And the entire purpose of this is to protect the seagrass. And you don't have just one boat, you have two boats. So you have the same issue on the other side of the dock with the smaller boat. Again, they can come in pointing toward the seawall, and even if they do that, they're still going to stir up a lot of sediment. They come in the other way, they're going to stir up more sediment. So I don't know who can address that question, but I would like someone to discuss the possibility of that seagrass surviving in that environment. And in summary, I'd just like to state that I would hope that the City of Clearwater would take the safety of its residents as its #1 priority. Thank you.
We'll now move on to closing remarks by planning and development staff. Oh, he didn't. Oh, I'm sorry. Comments by public? No.
Hang on one second. Yeah, you'll have an opportunity, but, Mr. Chairman.
No, my bad. I just went out alone. Yeah, he walked away from party status, yeah. So cross-examination of witnesses by planning and development staff.
Yes, we'd like to cross Mr. Todd Pressman briefly. Would
Yes,
you
sir.
mind just giving us like your qualifications and credentials?
I've been appointed by two Florida governors, Governor Jeb Bush to the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. I was reappointed by Governor Bush. I was then appointed by Governor Bush to the Southwest Florida Water Management District Governing Board, of which my fellow colleagues on the governing board thought enough of me to elect me as chairman of the governing board for a year. I served on Swiftmud for about 8 or 9 years. I was then subsequently reappointed by Governor Christ. All those appointments also included reappointment or appointment by the Florida Senate. I've been appointed by the Hillsborough County Commission to the Code Enforcement Board, which I served on for a number of years, and by the Pinellas County Commission to the Charter Review Board. So my experience, and then through my business, I've handled hundreds, literally hundreds of zoning and land use cases throughout the entire region, from Citrus County to Manatee County and throughout the region here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Cross-examination of witnesses by application.
Cross-examination. So there's cross-examination and then public comment, so you're good. They will not skip you, I promise. Mr. Chair, if you would indulge me, I know Mr. Pressman got 2 extra minutes. I do have some cross-examination for the city staff, which I think will be brief, but I would like to ask Mr. Carrier 3 specific questions that were raised by the party status folks, because I think that will streamline those questions and get that before the board now, so you don't have to try to remember to ask it in an hour from now or one of those things. So, Mr. Carrier, why don't you stand here and you can use the ammo if you'd like. One of the questions that we heard was that the real secret to this is that we have a 50-foot boat, so we need the 42 extra feet to get the 50-foot boat in there. Does the size of the boat matter at all in the way you design the lift and the length? And explain, if it does not, explain why.
The lift, yes.
Okay.
We tried to get the lift as close as we possibly could to the seawall with accommodating that 50-foot boat. We put the bow of the boat right at the edge of the seagrass. The boat's going to be out of the water. Sunlight can penetrate underneath the boat during certain periods of the day, and then in the evenings and midday, the seagrass is getting not shaded by the boat.
But in terms of the length of the boat, or the dock, does the boat length matter in terms of the 82-foot length that you requested and that as you've designed, or is it related to getting the boat into the deeper water?
The boat that they had shown us, the Sportfish boat, the dock was designed in conjunction with the lift to make the dock usable with that boat.
Okay.
Because it's a rear entry boat. It's a
Mr. Flannery said, what if it was a 40-foot boat? Would it make a difference, is my question. I think the answer was no.
No.
Because it has to get to the deeper water, right?
Correct.
Okay, could you explain that a little more clearly?
How's explain that? You can let him answer your
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
You can't answer his question, your question.
So it's a big Sportfish boat. It's got twin diesels. It's got inboards. I think the draft on it's like 4.5 feet. So we want to make sure that when he does pull the boat in and out off the lift, that he has enough clearance between the bottom of the props and the seabed. Where the props are going to be sitting is about approximately, you're going to have a 6-foot depth there at mean low tide. So you're going to have about 18 inches to 2 feet of water underneath the props. It's going to mitigate, when he's putting the boat on the lift and taking it off, it's going to mitigate any turbulence or any contact with the seabed. So we try and put the boat in a position where it's not going to interfere with the seagrasses or cause detrimental damage to the seagrasses or the seabed.
I'm sorry, 2 more quick questions for him. Maybe it might get to you, or answer your question. In terms of the alternate design, flipping it sideways and making the dock shorter, we heard a lot about that. Did you consider that, and is that feasible? And if not, why not?
I did. If we can go to the
overhead.
So the Snyder's, when they first approached me, he had 2 designs, 2 schematic designs. One was like the design we have with the boat's bow in, and the other he had sideways. So I just sketched this up. I'm sorry it's so rudimentary. This is the seawall. Sorry. This is the seawall. And if we're to have the boats where they would park parallel or parallel to the seawall, the inherent problem with this is when boats come in, they would have to come across the neighboring riparian rights. So they'd have to go on essentially the neighbor's property or their rights to that waterway to moor their boat. You're not going to get a 34-foot boat or a 50-foot boat in and out of slips meeting the northerly setback and not impact one of the neighbors. So typically, I don't like these designs, because if this guy sells his house, in my opinion, he now has to build an 82-foot dock to accommodate what he wants. You now block off his access to his boats, and he has to redesign his dock. That's why I steered him away from doing a parallel mooring.
And final question, I think you already answered this from me. As currently designed, will the boat shade the seagrass or no?
Very minimally.
Okay. So minimal impacts on the seagrasses. Did you have additional questions, Mr. Flynn? Thank you.
So if this was that's a giant lift, 66,000 pound lift.
It's big.
That's like, that's a commercial boat.
It's
They're commercial boats that big, pretty big.
Yes.
But with this, what would happen if you designed this under, say, somebody had a 35-foot boat, or a 32-foot, like my neighbor has? Would that be a problem? You could make it a lot shorter. And also, how wide is this boat? I just don't, in my mind, I see it actually getting on her neighbor's property, because these boats are not quite as vertical as they appear. The lift is there, but you end up with you put a canopy on top. Of course, you put all sorts of stuff on top of these things. You don't just, not a low boat. These things are like 30 feet, 15 feet high, because you sit up above and you can do all this other stuff. And you have a bimini top and everything. So you actually have a pretty good structure sitting out there. You might as well just stay on your boat. But that's a giant boat, so we're asked to give a really big, allow this applicant to have a really big boat is what we're really asking. If he wanted a 24-foot John boat, would that be okay? Or why are we doing all this for that? And a second question while I have you, what's the purpose of the pilings? I don't know anybody else that has those. That means somebody could tie their boat sideways, couldn't they? They could legally, so they could go on another 15 foot with a boat and tie a third one sideways, couldn't they?
So the way the original purpose of those piling were for the homeowner to use those guy poles to get the boat onto the lift. If there's inclement weather, or the wind's blowing, it would help him guide that boat onto the lift. The second reason is if it's a low tide, if it's an extreme low tide and they can't get the boat on the lift because there's not enough depth, water depth, it gives him the opportunity to at least tie his boat up there temporarily until the tide comes in. I have the same thing at my house.
Temporarily, how long is that?
3 or 4 hours, usually.
Could it be a week? I mean, you're now in deep water at least.
I don't expect him
Why would you move it?
Yeah, I don't want to speak for him, but I don't expect him to keep that boat in the water for a week.
What would hinder him from leaving it in the water permanently?
Mr. Flannery, let me answer that question for you. So we are agreeable to a condition of approval that says there will be no permanent mooring of boats on those tie poles. And it would only be used as guide poles or in an emergency king tide for very temporary use. But we are agreeable to a condition of approval that says we're not going to permanently tie the boats on that tie pole.
Could we remove them? I mean, that's part of the danger right there, is on top of everything else coming around, but those sticking out in the middle of everywhere. I mean, we've sailed up there.
Sure.
And I don't know whether it's very, very convenient and nice, but if there's a king tide or is there a hurricane coming through, that boat's just crashing into everybody's house anyway. That giant boat's going to just crash into every neighbor's anyway.
I suspect he would move if there's a storm coming.
This could have to be in a marina someplace and moved out of there because in a hurricane.
But the reason why we put the poles on the east side, a lot of times you get your strongest blows, strongest wind out of the northeast during the cold fronts that blow through. In that particular, if he's going to tie the boat up, it's nice to be able to have him to have some rotor, some lines out on what would be the east side of that dock, right? So the boat's not banging against the dock or banging against the tie poles. The wind is pushing against the boat, and the ropes are taking the buffering, and not the piling on the other side of the boat where the boat would be banging against the piling.
I'm sorry, I have to admit, I have a house much like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I have not had the courtesy of having all that. I just have to get my boats out of there and my neighbor. I mean, I seem to be able to live with it for 45 years somehow without having tie poles and all that other stuff and wrecking my neighbor's view doing it. But it's not a view question, but it is a question of why you have to have tie poles out there that will be in the middle of the waterway that will really be a danger for a starter. And the second one is why we have to have such a big boat. Essentially, why can't he tie up in a marina and have a smaller boat like everybody else? Why are we as a board making the decisions of what's the guidelines that we're supposed to be in? They have to show us there's a necessity, not that it's okay, we don't have any objection to it. So I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, it's on their thing to prove that we need to have that to make this thing work, not on our job to say, oh, it's okay with us. It's just not in our guidelines, the way I've read them. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to be asking questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Carrier. Ms. Hoffbaker, can I ask you a few questions, please?
Well, are you excusing Mr. Carrier?
Yes.
I have a question for Mr. Carrier real quick, if you don't mind. Mr. Carrier, you showed a schematic that showed the parallel design for the boat docks. Was that shorter or longer than the design?
I just sketched that up because I heard the question, and I just wanted to give everybody a graphic view of why I don't suggest people have parallel docks in that situation, because you have to cross over other people's riparian lines.
Okay, I didn't know if alternative designs had been considered by your office before you.
It was. That was an alternative design, but it was at a very early stage. It wasn't actually designed to specs. It wasn't dimensioned out. Just for the reasons like we talked about, we didn't pursue that option.
Do you know what the shortest length of design was that did not pose a hazard or a threat to the marine environment, the natural resources, the wetland habitats, or the water quality?
I could come up with that real quick for you if you want to give me a couple seconds.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Hoffbaker, how are you? Good, okay, if you just come up here and we'll ask you a few questions. I'm going to ask you about the staff report so we can just read along together. This is on page 3 of the staff report. I just want to confirm, was this application reviewed by the Environmental Division of the Engineering Department?
Yes, it was.
And did they find that it met or exceeded all of the criteria for approval, including the criteria in the conservation plan element?
Yes, they did.
And including the general applicability criteria that Mr. Pressman referenced earlier?
Yes, all of the criteria would have been reviewed by staff, as well as when it went to the development review, the DRC meeting, which was a meeting prior to coming to the CDB.
And from a planning perspective, did you also, or Mr. Perry also review it and determine from a planning perspective that it meets or exceeds all of the approval criteria, including the general applicability criteria and the future land use plan element?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, and that's all laid out in your staff report?
Correct.
And was it also reviewed by Mr. Gandy, the Marine and Aviation Department Director, and found to be supportable and safe?
Yes.
With that additional condition of approval regarding the tide poles?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And in your report, you talk about non-conforming existing docks versus the future of docks out there, and what the new Community Development Code, or the Code of 1999 Community Development Code, not so new, and the comprehensive plan foresee in terms of what those docks are going to look like related to the new concerns in the code about environmental impact, seagrasses, and marine life. And you talk about that in this paragraph. Could you just give us a little bit of a
Right, so
explanation
what
of that?
staff did is we just looked at our area docks and went to the county website and pulled the permit to get a look at, what are the other docks that are out there and what are the dates that correlate to when they were constructed. I can't give you a prediction of what's going to happen because, number one, I don't know where other seagrass beds are, and I don't know who's deciding to maybe build a larger dock. So the analysis that we did was just based on what existing conditions are that are out there. And there's a range of dock lengths as well as a range of when they were actually constructed initially.
And the two abutting properties, their docks were built prior to the 1999 Development Code, is that correct?
Correct, yeah, the longest docks that are out there, they were all built prior to the current code.
And, I'm talking about the abutting property, the 867 Harbor Island.
Yes, 867 was built in 1994, and it's 46 feet in length according to the county permit.
And therefore it's legally existing nonconformity, but if it were to be knocked down and they wanted to build a whole new dock, they'd have to come back through the same process that the Snyders are doing, correct?
Correct.
And this, the dock at 849 Harbor Island, that is 76 feet, right?
849 is listed as 76 feet, and the initial permit from the county dates back to 1997. There have been several other permits for either rebuilding or reconstructing, but the initial layout of it goes back to 1997.
So that 76-foot dock has existed 4 houses down from this site since 1997?
Correct.
And then that next door to that house, 843, is 70 feet. And when was that permitted?
That was 1996, the initial permit.
So since 1996, 1997, there have been 2 docks 70 feet or longer that are just 4 or 5 houses down from here, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We've heard a lot about the boat. Do you consider the size of an applicant's boat when they come in to apply for a dock? Is that part of the approval criteria?
The boat isn't part of the application. The application and the code speak to the dock, and that's what staff is charged with looking at.
In your opinion as an expert planner, is the board to consider anything about the boat or the size of the boat when it relates to whether the dock should be approved or not?
Well, I would think since the board is looking at what the code is speaking about, they would be charged with what is specifically limited to the code.
When the boat's not in the code?
That's correct.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have for you, Melissa. Thank you very much.
I have questions.
After his time.
May I call my next witness? Okay.
I've got a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Yes.
I don't mean to be difficult today, I'm curious. The application packet that I have in mind, isn't it true that the application packet submitted by the applicant says this? Secondly, the Snyder's boat requires that the boat lifts and docking area be in deeper water. A bathymetric survey was conducted at the site, and it was noted that the boat would have to be located in deeper water at the location where the terminal platform and boat lifts have been proposed. The application submitted by the applicant says that.
And the applicant can put all sorts of information in that maybe goes above and beyond what the code is asking. The code doesn't.
Considered in your analysis.
The code doesn't ask for us to analyze the boat. It asks us to, evaluate the dock length connected to the property waterfront length, and then you go on from there.
I agree. You just testified that it wasn't in the application, and I want to be clear that it is for purposes of the record. Did the city do any analysis of whether any dock between 43 feet and 81 feet would pose a threat to the marine environment, natural resources, wetland habitats, or water quality?
For this specific property? No, not that I'm aware of.
I do have one additional question. In terms of the view, we've talked about the view isn't considered over a neighboring property owner. The view is not in the code as it relates to whether this dock should be approved or not. There's nothing in the code or the law that allows the board to consider the impact of the view on neighboring property owners. Is that correct?
Correct. The Community Development Code does not include anything regarding view shed.
Thank you. Mr. Gandy?
Wait, do you have any questions for him?
Please come on up.
I do have questions.
Before she leaves,
sorry.
so
Yeah.
you'll get your
I do
time.
have some questions.
He has a question for you.
So from your permitting point of view, your job is to see if, say I wanted to carry a 100-pound refrigerator, if I used a large truck, fine with you, whatever it is, it meets the minimum requirement. It's not, your job is just to make sure that it's not less than the code. But say they ask for a 200-foot dock, would that be okay with you? What would limit what limited the length of the dock they could
Who's
go out?
they? Are we specifically talking about this site?
The city.
If the city was asking for a dock?
If they asked for 200, would that be okay?
If the
What would
applicant
limit
asks
it?
for 200? If the applicant
If
asks
they asked for 200 instead of 100, what would, in your code, would limit? I mean, trying to figure out who's governing what here. Yours is to sort of make everything work. Ours is to make sure that it works for the people. So I'm just trying to see, we both have different hats here, which is fine, the way it should be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the initial intent of the code was when it was written in 1999. I wasn't working for the city of Clearwater. But I can tell you that what the city is charged with is looking at our code and comparing whatever the applicant is proposing, how does it meet our code, or where does it fit within whatever deviations the code is providing. That is all we're charged with looking at. And then that information, the applicant continues to move on to Pinellas County, and they get into more of the nuts and bolts of it. They have, additional review, because they're the entity that issues the actual permit. We don't ever issue permits for docks.
No, and I'm not putting you on the spot, I don't mean it. I'm just trying to see whose hat we're wearing, when everyone has a different role to play. Did you review we have 6 guidelines in our code here that we have to meet. So did you review the one that says, guideline number 2, which will not hinder or discourage appropriate development and use of land? Is that something that you review in your purview, not whether it's reviewed, but that type of thing that you want?
I'm sorry, are you referring to the general
I did not bring all my
applicability
books here,
criteria?
but there's 3 of them, 2 and 3 on the criteria that we have to do as this
Yeah,
PDB.
the general applicability criteria, if that's what you're referring to, which is section 3-914.
Did you review like number 2 on will not hinder or discourage, in other words, did you review that for that?
Correct, and the statement is provided in the staff report. Do you want me to read it?
Would you please? Yeah.
Sure. The proposal includes a 480 square foot dock, which is important to note because our code then says somewhere below, when you get into another section, any dock that is 500 square feet or greater automatically falls into a different category. Whether it's for a single-family home or whether it's for a hotel, it then pushes it into a different type of review. So it's critical that, it was stated, this dock meets that level of review for it to be considered less than the 500 square feet. So, I'm sorry, I digress, but the proposed dock is typical of nearby waterfront properties. Similar structures exist on waterfront parcels in the immediate vicinity of the property. The dock will be located generally in the center third of the property's shoreline, and thus will not hinder development or use of adjacent properties. Therefore, it will have no adverse effects on health or safety or other activities that could result in visual, acoustic, olfactory, or hours of the surrounding neighborhood.
Did it say visual?
It does say visual.
Why does it say visual?
I'm not sure why it says visual. I didn't actually write this staff report. Mark Perry wrote this staff report.
So it does say visual.
So it does say the word visual in it, and I would have to pull up the actual code of the general applicability criteria to let's see here. The code is listed. It does mention the design of proposed development, so under the one element of the general applicability criteria, it does include visual, acoustic, olfactory, and hours of operation impacts on adjacent properties. But it's not specifically talking about a view shed or protecting a view of somebody else's across somebody's property. It's not addressing that.
What are you thinking visual means?
You would have to ask Mr. Seaman, who wrote the code. And
I have in my mind.
I think he passed away, so none of us can ask him.
I've read the code because I've designed docks in the past. Specific to the dock. The dock is not a visual impairment.
Yeah, and the general applicability criteria, every single application must answer those questions. Then it goes on, and the specific criteria, which relates to the flexibility that they're seeking. This is not a variance. Our code doesn't include that process. This is flexibility. And our code specifically talks about deviation, and that deviation that's being provided for is within the extent of the environmentally sensitive resources.
So are you saying the visual is for aesthetics or for obstruction?
Obstruction.
Can I ask that, may I ask Ms. Baker that question?
Okay, no, I understand, but it's the obstruction part.
So I have one final question now based on Mr. Flannery's line of questions that hopefully will help us out. So he's talking about the general applicability criteria, final number 6, section 3-914A6. It says, the design of the proposed development minimizes adverse effects, including visual, acoustic, and olfactory, and hours of operation impacts on adjacent properties. So as it relates to this criteria, it's talking about the design of the dock in this case, and that would be potentially architectural design feature, and that usually is being applied to a structure that is not a dock, correct? And in this case, we aren't building a boathouse, correct?
No.
Even though we could.
Correct.
And the code doesn't dictate the size of the boat lift, it only dictates the length of the dock, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to just point out that the boat lift, if you live next to one, they look like a house. They have giant beams across the top. They are not something you look through.
Yeah, even without a roof covering over it.
Even without it, they have giant beams. A 66,000 pound boat is not a little structure.
Right, the code is very
Might as well have a house.
specific that you can only have a covered roof over a boat lift, but that is not included with this proposal.
And you also responded to number 3. Could you do number 2 of adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing in the worker or working in the post? Did you do number 3?
Well, once again, that applicability criteria is typically written for, let's say, something that's going to generate a lot of traffic physically to the site. It's not, it's not factoring specifically in a dock per se. And because this is a boating community where pretty much everybody else property along all of the fingers of Island Estates has the opportunity, if they don't already, to have a boat and have a dock, this is consistent with the development that surrounds it. It's residential development, it's a dock for residential use, and it's within a community that's a majority boating community.
Just on the health and safety issue, as was shown on the previous drawings, a significant concern is the fact, to me, is that people travel along, I know it says no wake zone, but that means they go. They go fast. And the fact that it's going to jam them all the way out into that waterway, I mean, they're going along as they do now, and in front of my house the same way. And they have to go whoosh, way out around. That does sound like a concern over traffic, just purely traffic flow in that way, because it doesn't say no travel zone, it just says you can't make a wake. And that means they have to do out. Have you reviewed that? Do you have any, is that part of your job to review that type of thing? Or do we have any on staff that
No, we
who in
don't.
staff would look at that type of question?
Mr. Gandy, and I'm going to ask him to come
Correct.
next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not at the planning level, we don't look at wake zones.
I also feel that that's something in enforcement that should be looked at, maybe, that area.
They do not enforce stuff.
I get it.
They have the staff to do that. They never won't even do my manatees in front of my house, so forget it.
No, I get it, but that's something to look at.
Final witness I'm going to call is Mr. Eric Gandy, the Marine and Aviation Director. Mr. Gandy, would you please introduce yourself for the board? I know this will be, I believe, your first time testifying in front of the board.
Sure. I'm Eric Gandy, Director of Marine and Aviation. I have testified before council, or spoken before council many times, but this will be my first appearance before everyone here. So be glad to answer any questions once I follow up with you.
Thank you. Prior to becoming the Director of Marine and Aviation, did you spend basically a professional lifetime of public service as a Clearwater Police Department officer?
That's correct. I was 30 and a half years with Clearwater Police Department, served as a beach district commander, and established the Marine unit.
So you were in charge of the Marine unit of the Clearwater Police Department, is that correct?
Correct. Probably goes back 10 years or so when I established it.
Would you say you're intimately familiar with this area, the North Harbor Island terminus?
Quite. I used to have an OUPV and a 100-ton, and I used to run some charters back in that area quite frequently, and was familiar with the old Dunedin Pass before it sanded in.
And it's fair to say, as a lifelong law enforcement officer, public safety is of utmost importance to you, is that correct?
That's correct.
And in reviewing this application, you took into consideration life safety issues, is that correct?
I did.
And you found this application to meet or exceed the criteria for approval, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I've got a diagram here that shows the depths, and it shows the depths out to the slow speed marker alignment. Could you just explain to us kind of what we're looking at here, and as it relates in your professional experience to some of the concerns that Mr. Pressman had regarding shortcuts and people cutting in and cutting out?
So I have to speak to that a little bit because I watched some videos. When I evaluated this, I looked at a slow speed zone as just that, a slow speed zone where everyone should be operating responsibly. Any vessel operator has to maintain control of their vessel at all times and be responsible for their wake and what they're doing. That's not happening there clearly. So certainly I made a mental note to call my counterparts at the PD and have a conversation about that enforcement, because it did come up as I was the patrol major and then later as the deputy chief, of people violating that no wake zone. But in consideration for this, I looked at those tie poles specifically as an issue only at night and only under conditions where I suspected people would be respecting the no wake zone. So that was my evaluation at that time, and made the recommendation regarding reflective material on those tie poles. I will tell you that certainly my department is responsible for maintaining that no wake zone with the expectation that people respect that no wake zone. It's not a channel. It's not designed to delineate a channel to traverse. It's to exclude people on plane. So that's the idea behind a no wake zone. I will say I'll have my staff evaluate the distances as per the ordinance under which it was established, so we can take a look at that and the enforcement component. But beyond that, I didn't see an issue when I took into account there's a 76-foot dock several houses away, and someone could conceivably come and tie a boat with 18-foot beam and effectively do the same thing. Because that was my consideration for this particular project.
Can you explain that a little more, that last part you just said? Essentially, someone could just tie a boat to the end of the 76-foot dock that exists right next door.
Yeah, there's nothing that precludes you from end tying to any of these docks. So conceivably, you could come tie to the end of any one of these longer docks parallel to the seawall. I wouldn't do it. It might tear up your boat, but you could do it, and there's nothing that we could say, no, you can't do that.
And so what we're talking about from the safety issue, it's really an enforcement issue, is that right?
Based on what I saw, absolutely.
And in your experience, it seems like, from your experience that you don't feel like this application and the design of this dock poses any kind of public safety issue, and that the issue related to the videos that you saw is really an enforcement issue that's unrelated to this application. Is that fair?
I would say so. I mean, it's a boater behavior issue in that specific location, and quite frankly, it's all over the place now with the proliferation of boats and inexperienced operators.
And just to clarify here, we've got 3 tie poles at 861 Harbor Island, and we've got a 76-foot dock and a 70-foot dock right down the street. Can you just explain again, in your professional opinion, what are we seeing in this picture, and what does that mean from your perspective as life safety issues?
I didn't see them. I thought that nighttime operations, the tie poles, but you should be operating off plane at a slow speed, which negates that problem.
And then this image here, this just shows the full length to the channel. So we're basically in open water here, is that right?
Correct.
With plenty of space for boats and personal watercraft to operate, is that right?
Yes. So the old Dunedin Pass channel markers are still in existence on the north side of that east-west channel, and it's probably 500-600 feet off the seawall there to those markers, and you've got pretty good water all the way through there.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
The blind spot, I have a question, because everyone's talking about the fact that this dock and then the boat will create like a blind spot. But again, that blind spot is only based off of the fact that there's some poor boaters doing some faster type of things around there in the wake zone, right?
Yeah, I mean, after seeing what Mr. Pressman had and what some of the neighbors have spoken on, certainly our anticipated behavior and actual behavior are quite different, but I see that primarily based on my law enforcement background as an enforcement issue. I mean, that's a problem when they're ripping around that corner like that.
We have that on the beach on the other side too, and again, just a matter of trying to work that out.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So, let me just make sure, because now you're speaking on behalf of the city, and those tie poles sitting out there, you do not see a safety concern with those?
There are tie poles throughout the city. That's not a unique feature, and I think that's the misunderstanding. What 18 feet beyond that dock, when the tie poles could be 50, I don't know the purpose for a 50-foot tie pole in my own opinion, but there are type holes all over the place. There are unmarked type holes all over the place.
So I could put one at my house on Venetian Point. Can I? I just wanted to have on record for the TV, because I would put one in to stop those boaters coming by my house and killing manatees. But I wanted you on record, so I can come in next week with my...
Yeah, Eric Gaines said Mr. Flanders can put in a type hole. Not exactly, but yes, you have to follow the process.
Because I do, personally, I do see even on behalf of the city, the most concern I have really is the type holes. The whole thing, a lot of the points that are being made, I'm open on understanding. The type holes really give me a lot of worry, because they are really, why are we sticking, we can give them a ticket if they crash into the type holes. Well, I've worked for the utilities for years and have been sued many times for trucks getting run into with all their lights on, and they still get sued up to kazoo, and I don't want to see the city getting sued for type holes out in the middle of which also could be used to plant a third boat out there on that.
So is that a city? I don't understand what the type hole is.
Is there a question for the witness?
So I just wanted to clarify that that's okay, but yes, I am making a statement here. So thank you. But that's what I wanted to know and have your opinion on that, which I appreciate. Thank you.
And I have no further witnesses and no further questions. Thank you.
You have Mr. Carrier answer the question I asked him. There you go.
I'll go retrieve them. Do you want to move on with the other costs?
We'll now have cross-examination of witnesses by persons with party status, and this gives an opportunity for you to come up and expressly stay to the point on that. And we'll start with Mr. Cressman again.
Thank you. If I can ask the harbor master a couple questions, please. So as I heard you present to the board, you've been aware of this area for many, many years, a couple decades, was that correct?
Right.
And you've recognized it, as I heard you say, as a problem area, that people don't respect the wake area. And I believe I also heard you say that you're aware that people don't respect wake area, or they come in close to this area, cutting the corner.
I don't think I said they cut the corner, but I said that we've had complaints over the years for people violating that no wake zone.
So this has been a long-term problem that your department has been aware of and hasn't been fixed.
They've taken enforcement issues in the past, and the challenge you have, any kind of, and I'll speak to it from a law enforcement background, I guess is what you want me to do, but anytime you take enforcement action, it's a learned behavior. So you may not necessarily enforce on the same people that tell two friends and get the reputation of enforcement.
But the problem that you recognize for a long period of time is still there.
Yes.
Thank you. I understand. Thank you. May I ask the staff planner a question, please? Thank you very much. Just one quick question, which I think is very evident or very apparent. Did the applicant at any time in their written presentation or verbal indicate to you that they were presenting a 50-foot long boat here?
I don't know specifically if it was mentioned.
Well,
I'd have to literally go back and pull the application out. I don't have it physically with me. So I don't know if it was specifically mentioned. It wasn't shown on the drawing that was provided in our presentation.
Is there anyone here from the staff who can verify whether the size of the boat, the length of the boat was presented to the city staff? Because in my review of the city staff reports is that it's never mentioned. Is there anyone that can indicate or support that? Or, I'm sorry, just verify that.
I don't know if anyone can.
Okay, thank you. I can't even answer the question.
Next, we have Mr. Mark Figlio, please, if you have any questions.
My questions regarding, I was a little confused on...
Face the
I'm sorry.
Microphone, sorry.
I was confused on when they asked about the attorney asked the dock builder about...
You're going to have to speak forward into the
Microphone will pick you up.
It'll catch you, and then
Okay.
you can turn on.
All right, let me start over. My question is regarding the question from the attorney about the dock builder and the size of the boat. Does that dictate how far out you're going to put the lift and the size of the lift and things like that? If it was a 30-foot boat, would you need a 66,000-pound lift? Would it have to be that far out? So I would like some clarification, just from my perspective. If you have a very big draft boat, you need to be in deeper water. Hence, there is a reason to go further out. But I'd like clarification on that. So
Like, just so I'm clear, you're asking if we were to put a smaller boat, and my answer to you
my
is...
little whaler you've seen.
But my answer to you is, you don't have to put any boat out there. You can keep the existing dock that's there, and you could make the client only have a kayak. Because
Right.
then the...
But, no, people who have a right to have a boat, when Ian and Aaron came to my house, what he said is, well, we'll put our 50-foot boat sideways, one boat, not two. And he said, we'll just go out, build a dock, won't be any big deal. And they didn't want to do that. And I said, sounds fine with me, but they said they didn't want to block their view. So that was an option, they said, single boat, not two. You described two,
We have two
but
slips.
a single slip. He was talking to me about a single slip. But the question is...
I never saw that. He came to me with a design that looks something like this that I'll show. And this is the answer, the attorney's question. You know, how far out would we have to go? If you could zoom in, how far would we have to go if you parallel the boats? Roughly speaking, I came out 40 feet, right? I gave an extra 5 feet of buffer for the seagrass. I have an 18-foot slip for the smaller boat, and then a 20-foot for the bigger boat. The overall length is 89 feet.
Yeah, I mean...
So it's longer. And I don't recommend it because to access the slips, you impact the neighbor to the south, which I believe is you, right?
That's me.
So if you're willing, I guess, don't want to talk on behalf, if you're willing to give up your right to never build the dock there, so that we always have access to their slip.
Or you're supposed to build it in the center of the lot, so yeah, we'd never build a dock there.
But it is. I'm only, right here, it's rough, but the numbers will work. I'm 20 feet, I have to be 20 feet off the north property line. So now I'm impacting the north neighbor even more by an extra 10 feet by moving the dock closer to the neighbor.
No, you make perfect sense. I just feel like we're trying to put 10 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound bag. If they would, you could purchase a lot that can facilitate large boats. You get to a point where you're trying to build a marina at an 84-foot lot. That's, I mean, it just... My question is, do you see this often, that people want to take a small, our lots are small. You can go spend some serious money and get some real waterfront lots. It just seems like there's too much going on. When Ian talked to me, it was one boat.
I think you have a large lot. I think it's very wide because we can accommodate the entire dock structure without asking for any setback, variances to setback. We're only asking for a variance to the length so we can get beyond the seagrass.
Because of the size of the boat. Which I get it, he's going to have to...
No, we're only asking for 42 feet. The usable portion of that dock is only 42 feet, which we have every right to get.
One other, and this is, when you guys, I mean, we've met before. When you guys were out doing the survey, I asked, I don't know if it was you or one of the other gentlemen, you said that, yeah, we did one in St. Pete, and they got out of the, they canceled the contract because it had seagrass, so that's a kind of a taboo. And I don't know if it was you telling me that. It was maybe a younger guy that was in my yard doing some stuff. He was on the boat with you guys. But I said, well, what happens if you own the lot? And he said, well, there are mitigation. There's companies that replant seagrass in the surrounding area. So if you are only allowed to go out 42 feet, he said, you can pay, people do it. You pay to get this seagrass, different seagrass, replanted in the area, and then you don't have to go out as far. Is that an option? I mean, that's what you guys told me. I'm not making that up.
In my experience doing this the last 20 years, that is not an option in Pinellas County.
I think Mr. Menendez is probably a better witness for the seagrass question too, so.
Okay.
So there's a lot of people that are walking.
You get closer to the mic.
I learned my lesson that way.
A lot of people will tell you that they can replant seagrasses. They're still working on that. Because you put them in, you have a bad year, a hot year, a cold year, the sand shift, now you're starting from scratch, okay? And there'll be people with literature and
articles and publications, oh, we replanted this and we planted that. That all sounds good, but it's not the case. The seagrass is one of the highest level of natural communities, just like a cypress dome. And you can't go out and build a cypress dome overnight, same with seagrass. So you could, but you're going to be throwing away money.
Well, no, that's a good, thank you for the response. It was your company that told me. I'm not a genius on seagrass. You guys told me.
That was a surveyor, and he shouldn't have told you that because he doesn't know that. He knows surveying, he doesn't know seagrass.
Yeah, because all three of you guys were together. So I'm just saying, that's what I was told, is you can pay and replant the seagrass.
You can try.
Okay.
I have some experience with doing exactly that. I was civil engineer and civil designer for years. The problem with it is you can try, but as he said, until it's rooted, every time the tide, it takes the seagrass away. And then DEP or whichever is going to monitor it, they'll be coming out every year for 10 years to see if it's planted. And if it's not, you have to reseed, replant. You can't protect it.
No, it makes sense. I was just, they had told me that, so I was curious, so thank you.
Thank you. Not yet. Not yet. Well, I know you're there. I swear you're going to have your time.
You should have gone party status.
I know. Connor, do you have any questions or cross-examination?
I don't have any questions.
Thank you. Victor, do you have any questions or cross-examination on anybody?
The only question I would have is that the issue keeps on coming up that it's not the size of the boat that's dictating this, but then everything that I'm hearing is the size of the boat dictates this. So I just want some clarification from either the dock builder or the attorney whether the size of the boat is dictating this. I mean, if they had a 24-foot boat, 28-foot boat, and they can build a dock parallel to the seawall and not have any issues. The reason why they can't get in is because they have such a large boat, and that's why they have to go across the other person's lot.
I think that Mr. Carrier just answered that question, so if the board wants to hear him answer it again, he will. If you've heard, it's asked and answered. So.
Well, he answered facetiously by saying you can kayak.
If you have a specific question for him, go right ahead.
Well, I mean, can you have something beyond a kayak, parallel to the seawall? Can you have a 28-foot boat parallel to the seawall, with a lift parallel to the seawall? That's all I'm asking. And not extend near as far out as you can. There's a lot of them in the States. If you drive around,
That's a loaded question, because you're allowed to put davits on the seawall, so somebody could have a small Boston whaler on the seawall and get the permit through Pinellas County. But you're also impacting seagrasses. There's no way to put a dock out here and have the lift over anywhere within the 40 feet of the seawall, because you're going to impact the seagrasses.
So if you put it at the edge of the seagrass and put a lift out there parallel to the seawall, could you do that? So it goes 40 feet.
Just like I did here?
Go 40 feet, another 15 feet for the lift.
This is the same, just like I did here? So this is, I had to sketch it, I apologize, this is what I had up earlier.
Where's the seawall?
So the seawall's here. And
Right, yeah, I remember that diagram, and you were mentioning that you cannot get into that without going across that lot, and I dispute that. I think if you had a 50-foot boat, yes, you couldn't. You're right. But if you had a 28-foot boat, you could. I see it on Allen Estates down every single canal. There are multiple boats that are parallel to the seawall. There's no issues with getting into the lift whatsoever. And you're saying in this particular case, it's not possible. And my question is, is it because it's a 50-foot boat?
You couldn't do it with the other smaller 30-foot boat that they're proposing to put here. Because this dock can't be any closer than 20 feet from this, and this is the scale, can't be any closer than 20 feet.
The lift poles, right?
No, the dock structure itself can't be any closer than 20 feet. So you move this over to here, you're left with 48 and 20, you're left with...
Well, you're putting the lift on the other side of the dock. I'm saying you terminate the dock, and then you put the lift there. You're putting the lift on the other side of the dock, and yeah, you're right, that way you're getting it closer to the property line. I'm saying terminate the dock, then put the lift out there. There's dozens and dozens of lifts on LSAs like that, dozens. And you're saying that's not possible?
No, anything's possible.
Can we do one question, one answer? It's real hard for...
Yeah, so anything's possible. But the property owner has a right to have 2 mooring locations.
Right, understood.
And we're asking for just 2.
Well, actually, you're asking for 3.
No, because when this boat sits on this lift, you can't moor a boat there. Because the stern of the boat's going to stick out slightly past that piling.
So you can't put any kind of boat there?
You can put a small, well...
So then it's a mooring slip. You can't put a 50-foot boat there, but you can put a 28-foot boat there, which makes it a mooring slip. Am I wrong?
You're allowed, you could possibly have, yes, you can have, that would be 3 mooring locations, but you're allowed to have 2 in Pinellas County.
So, but you're asking for 3?
We're not asking for 3. We're asking for 2. 2 and 2 boats.
Excuse me, the way he answered that question, he said if you put a boat on each lift, you could put a boat there. It couldn't be a 50-foot boat, but it could be a boat there. In my mind, I understand that as a mooring slip. Now, how's that's not interpreted as a mooring slip is beyond me.
Okay, so here's an example, and I'm not trying to be semantics or anything. And I know everybody can't see this,
Can you put that on there?
Okay. And if you can zoom way in, and I apologize for it being, we'll look at this regular dock here, right?
Okay.
You have a boat on the boat lift, you could moor a boat here, and then you could moor a boat here.
No,
You have another dock here. There's a dock head here, you can moor a boat here, and you can moor a boat here. So that would give you 3 slips there. Here, you can do the same thing. You can moor 3 slips.
I understand what you're saying. You don't keep on going with that. What he's trying to establish is that you can put a boat, let's say on a catwalk, where there's no tie poles. Yes, you could, but under the definition of the city of Clearwater, or even in the county, that is not a mooring slip. Could you put a boat there? Yes, but it's not. Okay. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thank you. It's all right. That's what we're here for. All right, now we'll move on to comments by the public.
That's you.
Are you ready?
That's you. You're up.
This is your moment.
They all say that.
Remember panelitis? You gotta read the spelling. It's tough, we Greeks, you know. If you can spell it now, you'd be an honorary Greek. Anyway, I wish my wife were here because she would articulate this better than myself. You know, we talk about seagrass and sea life. She's one about human life. I mean, this is an accident waiting to happen. It's not like we don't want somebody to have a dock, okay? But when you stick it out there 100 feet with tie poles and everything, I mean, it's an accident waiting to happen. I know when I belonged to Carnival Yacht Club, you know, I live about 10 doors south of this location of 15, whatever, but boats come flying through there. A lot of boats going to Carnival, to and from, are, you know, they reciprocate with other yacht clubs. They come through there, they don't know what's around the corner. They come zipping through there. Same with the other way. I mean, and then on bad weather days, sometimes it's blinding rain. Boats are rushing like heck, getting back home to get their boats put away. And I mean, I can't even see them hardly, and they're going 100 miles an hour to get back to their dock. They're going to hit something if they make that corner sharp. So we got to keep that in mind, I think, because we're looking at a lawsuit waiting to happen. Not just, you know, you folks on the board, but the taxpayers. I mean, there's going to be millions of dollars in lawsuits down the road. I know a friend of mine represented the kid that, you know, didn't die, but got paralyzed from the accident on Gulf to Bay with Hulk Hogan's son. I mean, that kid got, you know, the family got, multi-million dollars, but the kid's paralyzed for life. We're going to be ruining families for lives if we continue to take a chance like this. I mean, it's sad, but there's going to be a lot of harm and a lot of sadness in a lot of families. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Good afternoon. My name is Brad Mike. It's M-E-I, N as in Nancy, C-K, and I live at 720 Harbor Island. I'd first like to start off by saying thank you for your service in serving our city. I don't think that any of our neighbors wants to keep another neighbor from getting their rights to have a boat. You wouldn't have had 81 homeowners on Island Estates sign a petition. They're not signing it for that. There's a perception that it's a danger. And I'm also here representing Carlisle Yacht Club, 1039 El Dorado Avenue. And we already have a challenge now with larger boats. As they try to transit, they can't go through the Mandalay Channel because of the bridge height. So there are times where some of our boats up to 90 feet cannot get through due to the depth of the water. So they hug the shoreline. Now, they're not traveling at high speeds, but when you have that wet slip at the T that's not lit, it's dark, fog, whatever, there could be an issue with somebody not seeing it, because this is a 30% premium, if my math is right, from 76 foot to 99 feet of giving them additional length out into that area. Just because it's not part of the channel doesn't mean that we don't transit it. As a boater myself, I go through there often. I try to stay as close as I can to the shore. Hopefully I'm not on video violating no wake zones, but at night it is dark to the east. And so I try to stay as close as I can to the shore so that I have some light, because I don't really go without a light. I mean, I don't have a spotlight that I use. So I don't think this is about us interpreting the city code. I don't think this is about us keeping our neighbor from having their right as a property owner. I think this is about, there's a perception that there could be a safety issue. And so I know you have a very difficult decision, but hopefully you'll take into consideration maybe some studies warranted to determine whether or not having those tie poles with a wet slip at the end that's not lit. I don't know that the reflective material on the pile is actually going to do that, because I'll tell you, I have trouble seeing at night, and there's a lot of things that come up. You look at lights and you look at things differently, and it's difficult to navigate, even if you're at a slow speed. So hopefully you would take into consideration why people are here today. They're here because we care about our families and we care about people. And the last thing is, I got 18 seconds. At Carlisle, I'll tell you how many times we watch people run up there because they don't know the waters, run right into the shallow area, and they're stuck there until the tide changes. God forbid somebody comes around that corner and experiences an incident. I just don't know what would happen. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Michael Sovey, 819 Harbor Island. It's S-O-V like Victor, I-E. Interesting listening to the city and the planners. I have 2 lifts on my dock. My seawall is about 83, 84 foot wide. I was denied an extension, so I'm right about 40 feet. I have 2 lifts. I was not allowed to put in tie poles on my 40-foot dock, and was actually told while in the city offices that it would potentially be a hazard to boats going by who wouldn't expect them out that far. So this is about half the distance of what we're talking about, and I'm all the way down in the middle where you're not being funneled through that corner. So I think there's a little disparity or discrepancy in how we're treating different residents for some reason. I don't quite know why. The second piece of it is I have 4 children, 7, 10, 10, and 12, and they do wakeboard, they tube, they kayak, and my wife does as well. What this would do as we go around the island, which we do with the children, it creates a funnel. It's going to push us off that out towards where the boats are. And yes, there'll still be some distance to get around the dock, as you noted, but it's bringing everybody closer together, and it does create a potential safety concern. So I hope you guys don't overlook that. I understand how the code was stated. I think the Seagrass item is a little convenient. No one ever talked to me about that when I was looking to do my dock and said, no, you should go 20, 30, 40 foot more. Would have loved to. I would love my tie poles today too. I don't have them. So please consider the safety aspect of it. I know there's ways around things, and attorneys like to get cute with laws and regulations and twist them a little bit, but you have been misled to what that area is and what that funnel would look like from a safety perspective, especially for my 4 young children who are out there on a weekend basis. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Albert DeCovo, D-O-C-O-V-O, 806 Harbor Island. for all the reasons he just stated, the safety of the kids, kayaks, paddle boards coming around that bend, that needs to be considered on this. As far as those 8 ties that you wanting for a boat, if you all really think they're not going to bore another third boat there, we're in la la land. They're specifically putting that there for a third boat. Because if you can't maneuver a 50-foot boat into a slip, you shouldn't be driving a 50-foot boat. So let's get real about that. When I pulled permits on my 2 docks, and I'm on the inside, I was required to pull out 3 ties that I had existing because I wasn't allowed to have them. If I followed their rules, my dock would be in the middle of the canal. You know, let's be real about that. Okay, that's all nonsense. When I pulled my permits, I was never asked about seagrass. Why did they pull a seagrass environmental study? Because I wasn't asked. I got seagrass. I've got a boat left. They did it for the purpose of going out 100 feet. And these 8 tie poles that they're putting in there, absolutely absurd if you think they're not going to use it for a third boat. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Carroll, and I'm at 738 Harbor Island, Clearwater. A couple of things I just wanted to go over. And let me read some language to you. The granting of the requested deviation will be in harmony with the general intent and purpose of this section and will not be injurious, I may not be pronouncing that correctly, injurious, I believe, to the area involved or otherwise detrimental or of adverse effect to the public interest and welfare. That is right out of your ordinance. It's ordinance number 8654-15, page 27, and it has to do with the approval, the second phase approval, or whatever you call how you're operating. I think it's important to really highlight public interest and welfare. I took a petition around just on one street in the neighborhood, without exception. Everybody signed that petition. They were amazed that they were even requesting something like that, and they were amazed that the city let it go this far. I'm just sharing that with you. But their primary concern is safety. I've lived out there on Island Estates for 21 years. And it is a beautiful community. I'm truly blessed. And you guys have done a great job of enforcing rules out there. I'm going to tell you, I've never heard so much concern, complaint about this issue. And this was just one street that I walked. So you all need to know that people are very concerned, and I think we need to consider public welfare. That's you. And this slip business that's out at the end, get ready, because you're going to have everybody on Island Estates want one of those slips. For that purpose, we'll sign, we'll say, hey, we're not going to use it other than for that purpose. Believe me, you're going to have to staff up like crazy to enforce that rule, because I'll be the first in line for that. Back it down. That is crazy. And what does that have to do, that slip, concerning the grass flats? I mean, when you think about it, it's obvious what they're doing on that. And do I still have time? No. No? Okay. Wait a minute. I missed out on a minute.
You did have to.
Okay, you're right. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? No? We'll now go on to closing remarks by the planning and development staff. None? Closing remarks by persons granting party status. We'll stay in the same order, please.
Mr. Chairman and board members, we appreciate your time and attention today. Todd Pressman for the record. This is a major arterial water roadway. You've heard that for the residents who live there for many years and decades. Your highest calling is public safety and public security. And that is a major part of this request. Our opinion of the criteria is it fails minimum variance or minimum request, fails reasonable, fails safety, fails character, fails scale, and a lot of it is about a big boat. And the best question came from Mr. Flannery, who asked that question, because what speaks loudest is what no one was told or disclosed or had transparency. And that was the size of a very large boat and a 66,000-pound lift. That is what is driving this request. And I don't accept myself personal opinion, and it's, again, my opinion, a red herring, that a 40-foot boat, straight out, not the parallel silliness, not silliness, but parallel discussions, how a 40-foot boat absolutely will work here straight out. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. I think that's very reasonable and very straightforward. You've been told by the harbor master that this has been a long time problem of boat traffic that has not been fixed. That's been substantiated by resident after resident. And that should speak loudly to you, because he made that very clear. That has been a problem that has not been fixed and has not been fixed as of today. If those videos give you a little nervousness, and they should give you a lot, that substantiates to you the difficulty here. Those problems are made even worse, as indicated, at night or in bad weather. So, in closing, we would ask you to pay very close attention to all the criteria in the staff report. We appreciate your patience and your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Befiglio, do you want a closing statement?
Can I get close to the microphone?
Please.
Good morning. But I just wanted to thank you all for your service to our community. It's very important, and I appreciate it. I'm not going to, you've heard everything. I don't have any new information. It is about safety. I mean, I don't want to see somebody decapitated at the house next to me, the dock next to me. I don't want to see a tragedy. I don't want to be part of that. But you know, please do the right thing, and thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. Connor, do you have any? Victor, do you have anything, closing statement? Applicant.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair, board members, Brian Unks on behalf of the Snyders, who are still very happy and excited to be moving here to Clearwater and are looking forward to being very good neighbors going forward. They understand the concerns that their neighbors have. We feel respectfully that we've answered all of those concerns. Your harbor master, former lifelong law enforcement officer, director of the Marine Division, founder of the Marine Division, intimately familiar with this area, has answered all your questions. All of the expert witness testimony has been in support of the application, and there has been no expert witness testimony opposing the application. In terms of being good neighbors, they're agreeing to 2 additional conditions of approval. One of those is that they will not moor more than 2 boats on this facility on a permanent basis. And the only time they would have a 3rd boat would be if a friend were to come visit for the day or something like that. And the second one is that they will not use the tie poles to permanently moor the boats, that those will be guide poles, and that they will only be used in an emergency like a king tide. So this board was created in 1999 to take politics and popularity out of site plan approvals. What you're guided by today is the law. That's all you're allowed to consider. The size of the boat is not part of the law. It's not part of the approval criteria. Your neighbor doesn't get to tell you in the United States of America how large your boat gets to be, okay? What is in front of you is the criteria in section 3-601 specifically related to docks. Docks may go up to a maximum of 250 feet, okay? The maximum length is 250 feet that could be asked for. In this case, as of right, we can go to 42 feet. In this case, the law says we can't start until we get to 40 feet. So all we're doing is adding the as of right length to the earliest place that we can start per Pinellas County Water and Navigation in the city of Clearwater as it relates to impacts on marine facilities and the seagrass. So your job today is to apply the law. The Fontainebleau case is very clear. You do not have a right to a view over your neighbor's property. The visual impacts minimizes the adverse visual impacts. That's talking about architectural features, and that's really talking about more traditional structures, not docks. Mr. Gandy is an expert on safety. We've talked about the Kathleen Bay versus Fagan case out of the 2nd DCA. That case talks about what's competent substantial evidence in a land use hearing, in a quasi-judicial hearing. Lay witness testimony about noise, safety, those types of things is not competent substantial evidence. We have followed the law. We have followed the rules. We are and will be good neighbors. We're asking for the minimum that we're entitled to ask for. It's a property right. Respectfully, if this application is denied, it's denying my client's use of their property. And we've got docks down the street, 2 doors, 3 doors over that are 76 feet that have been there since the 1990s, and you've got docks on Clearwater Beach that are up to 120 feet that were recently approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I for a moment?
Yes, please.
Just before you begin to deliberate, I just want to note a couple of items. The first is that a petition has been submitted to the clerk. I don't believe y'all have seen it, but if you have, I'm going to instruct you to disregard it in your deliberations. And for the simple reason that the people who signed it, some of them may be here or may not be, I don't know, but they are not here to be cross-examined and for you to judge their credibility. Okay, so it is not really permissible for you to rely on those things. You've not been able to see them, hear them. The applicant, moreover, has not been able to cross-examine them and to test the weight or sufficiency of their evidence. Okay. The second thing is Mr. Unk's final statement, and I think he began with it, and this has troubled me through this hearing, is that beginning where Pinellas County tells us we can begin and going out 42 feet. I just want to bring your attention, and I think that he's correct, that Section 3-601, C, G, 3, all those subsections guide you here, A through D. Yes, a dock up to 250 feet is permitted by the code. That's the max that you could consider. If the request was for 251, it wouldn't be before you. But the as of right length is, I think, 42 feet. So that's where you begin when you analyze subsection 1 of those criteria. And that criteria says that a dock of lesser length, meaning a dock of lesser length than the one applied for and sought through the application, poses a threat to the marine environment, natural resources, wetlands, habitats, or water quality. And I'm making no comment on the evidence, but I'm simply advising you to consider whether a dock between 43 feet and 81 feet poses a threat to the marine environment, natural resources, wetlands, habitats, or water quality. That criteria dovetails with subsection C, where it says that the deviation sought to be granted is the minimum deviation that will make possible the reasonable use of the applicant's property. And I say that because Ms. Hogg testified that the Clearwater Code does not provide for variance. I'm going to respectfully but forcefully disagree in this instance. These criteria are variance criteria. I've had the pleasure of doing variance applications for docks up and down the beaches for many years. And those are the criteria established by common law for variance and then subsequently codified in many city and county codes throughout the state. Those are just, you can call it a deviation, you can call it you know, you can call it a variance. You can call a basketball a round thing or a spherical object. But you call it a variance or a deviation, it's a variance under the law here. So Mr. Ungst is correct. You should confine, and you have the general criteria, and then consider these 4 criteria, A, B, C, and D, in your deliberations. I have to instruct you, I apologize, not to consider the petition. It's not properly before you for the reasons I stated, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have during your deliberations.
Thank you, Jay. At this time, we'll close of the public hearing and discussions and vote by the board. You want to start? Mike, go right ahead.
To make my personal position clear, I understand that the applicant has a right to build a dock. And the code describes what that can be, and they've proceeded to build within what they could do with that code. And it's agreed, I can't even tell them what size boat they could boat on it. Couldn't tell my neighbor that, and I didn't even try, because that's their right. The 2 concerns I have is, number 1, purely for safety, those tie poles should not be in there. I don't see a reason that they out in that waterway. I have been stuck myself in a John boat in a Boston whaler coming across the intercoastal in a fog so deep that I had to pull out my GPS unit. Luckily, I had one on my cell phone, and I could actually see the islands before I ran into them. But I'm not going to see a tie pole out there in the middle of the waterway. And I don't care what happens. I've been in enough litigation now to know that if you put something that's a hazard that can be interpreted as a hazard, someone's going to pay for attorney's fees to battle that thing off. I don't see any reason we should stick our neck out for the tie poles in the middle of it. You can have that dock just fine without the tie poles.
Can we force proper lighting besides just reflective? Can't there be a lighting that's
You put beacon lights on
if they want.
Channel markers, I don't know why you couldn't put one on that.
Of course, now you do a visual problem, because now everyone's going to have to look at your light flashing out in front of you all the time.
Yeah.
If
That's
you're
probably
in the
why the reflective lighting is more.
I mean, I just think you have to have a light to see those in a fog. You can't see them. So I'd just like to say the tie poles are something that could come out, and we could just ask not to allow those. That would be a very reasonable thing to ask. Now, my more dream request, and I'll admit it's more of a dream, is that we ask the Pinellas County Authority to say what the maximum that they will allow, instead of us saying we'll take anything and you pull us back. It'd be nice to see what they said first, and then we say we'll allow that. And I don't know how that would really operate. I know it's probably not the past that things go, but the rest of it I can just say that that is my big, I wish we could take out, I'd like to make a motion that we do not allow the tie poles. That's the only thing that I would like to, that I can really do anything about, although I feel with the residents out there and everything else, I can only do what the code says.
Right. I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's hardcore.
I just have a question. So from an environmental impact, we can only look at the dock and not what vessels are attached to it, right?
Correct.
Okay. That was one of the things I needed to clarify.
Yeah, really where the boat comes in, and I've seen a lot of these applications, the boat was discussed today, but I've seen a lot of applications where the applicants aren't quite as savvy as our applicants, and they'll come in and say, I need a lengthier dock because I got a bigger boat. I need more draw, I need more water, right? That happens a lot. And it really speaks to the hardship element of the criteria before you. That's essentially considered a self-created hardship, and it ordinarily does not.
Are they considered part of the dock too, as far as? No, okay. Because I was curious about the depth, because I know the lift has to be pretty substantial in order to lift what it's got to do, plus the depth that's there. Didn't know if they had to do some dredging or.
No dredging
It would be a different permit.
Right.
Depth is not an issue. And I continue to point you to subsection A. I think that's a really critical piece of your analysis here.
Well, I mean, as far as the tide pole idea, I'd be on board with that too, if that doesn't come up. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. One of the things that, I understand the concern of the homeowners, I really do. One of the problems that, well, the point that they're making, if somebody's going to come around a corner and hit the poles, anybody who comes around a corner and hits the poles at any speed is breaking the law. So they're going to be the ones responsible for the damage, and they're going to be responsible for whatever happens to them. So it's kind of irrelevant to this, because it's a no-wake zone. So that's if they're going fast enough to do damage, they're going too fast. So other than that, everything fits into it. I'm trying to find a reason why not to allow it to happen. Well, we have no ordinance that says you can only have a 40-foot boat here, or you can only have a 30-foot boat here. We don't have anything that says that. If you get it into the ordinances or into to what we use to take into consideration of these permits, that's great, but it's not there. So all of that's actually moot. So really, I'm as the permit stands as it is, it's a legal permit.
I want to say, certainly on the safety issue, I risked my own life 3 days ago in that same area for 2 hours on a paddleboard. So I understand the challenge with the boat traffic over there and the safety. I'm over there fairly often. I know your neighborhood well from both the street side and the water side. So I understand all that. And my challenge is, I don't know if our ruling on this dock impacts the safety. The problem, I think, is Mr. Gandy said, it's more the boat traffic coming through there, people speeding and people not playing by the rules, and heavy boat traffic on particular times. Our charge is that we have to, as has been pointed out, apply the approval criteria and weigh the competent, substantial evidence presented. And in this particular case, all of our expert witnesses have said that it's within the approval criteria and should be approved. And so, as much as I understand the concerns and appreciate the beauty of your neighborhood and the surrounding water, I think in this case pretty limited in applying the evidence that's been presented to the approval criteria.
Sam?
I mean, that's my problem too, is I have my hands tied in the public safety aspect, that can I deny a permit based off of that? Due to safety, due to, as my fellow board member said, bad actors, so to speak, and how they handle it. So because we're going to have all these people, they're going to act a certain way, we can't allow this because it's just going to happen. I don't have the legal right, I think, to do that. I can only stress that this is something that needs to be looked at by the city and enforcement. I deal with that on the beach too. We have bad actors, no wake zone people, and this is something, this meeting should bring cause that we shouldn't have a problem that should be continuously happening. And we need to do something about it. The city needs to invest in enforcement and protect, because I am a paddleboarder. I do go out there too, and it is something that I have children and I want them protected. If I could say, but I'm not my right to deny a permit based off of that safety criteria, unfortunately. But it is definitely well noted and something that I will personally be looking into myself to make sure that enforcement does happen as best as my ability.
Thank you. Both sides have made some very good points. when we deal with issues like this with the health safety of the public, and as stated, we have to go by code in doing things, I don't know that I would be reluctant to support a proposal without the tide poles either, Mike. But I do know that this permit will have to be reviewed. It doesn't stop here if it goes through. Pinellas County is going to look at this. DEP is going to, my belief, is going to have regulation on this. If not SWIFMUD, I'm not sure about that. But there's going to be additional that may be more restrictive than what we agree with here today, if it approves. There is nothing as stated in here about the size of a boat that I could think of. When this came about, I did some research and I asked some questions, and there is nothing that I know of or could find anything that could restrict anybody's size of a boat if they can physically put it in there. My first comment was also to do about something horizontal, parallel to the shore as well. But then, and when you came up here, I'm like, if I was that neighbor doing it, well, that boat would be pulling in front of my backyard every day to pull in and pull out. I think it would be more detrimental to me as the neighbor than somebody coming straight in, straight out. So I wouldn't want that. So I think I got to lay it right there, but just open if there's a motion on the board, one way or the other.
I'm going to try mine. You guys can all shoot me down, but I'm going to do it anyway. I move that we approve the application with the requirement that the type of...
You need to read the, I'll get it to you, Mike. If
Would you
have it.
please? Never made a motion before after. I just listen.
Well, you need the reading out of your book, though, Mike. You need the, hold on. It's in your book, Mike.
I got the book.
Yeah, it's in there, number 8. There you go.
Thank you. I move approval of application number FLD 2022-2007, 873 Harbor Island, provided that the tie poles be removed from the approval.
You're saying all tide poles?
All tie poles outside beyond the dock,
So there's 4.
the ones that are in the intercoastal.
There's more to the motion.
We understand your motion, you're fine.
The final 4, you look at the
It's a sample.
The tie poles are the 4 that are beyond the, beyond the dock.
Okay.
Okay, you just got to finish.
And based on the evidence and testimony presented in the application, the staff report and today's hearing, and thereby adopt the findings of fact and conclusions of law in the staff report and conditions of approval as listed.
Except as you've otherwise stated.
Except as otherwise stated.
As you
Just, no problem.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
There's been a second.
All right, before you vote on the motion, I've been advised by, or requested by Attorney Ungst to confirm which tie poles precisely we're talking about. It looks to me like there are tie poles generally to the south and north at approximately the same parallel line.
Yes, the four that are farthest from the seawall, that are in a straight line.
It looks like there's
So the
6.
two that are parallel with the
Parallel to the seawall, but out beyond the end of the dock.
they're all parallel to the seawall. I'm talking about
these
the ones
two
that are parallel with the end of the dock.
Those, he's saying those remain.
Those remain. They're in line. Those 4 that are in the, the 4 out farthest out.
That's always my question.
Mr. Chair, I want to make sure we're considering the city's amended conditions of approval, not any conditions before that, the ones that were most recently done. I just want to make sure that we're considering that. I think we are, but.
Yeah, I mean,
Is that what
the staff report and conditions of approval is listed.
Yeah, because we amended it and we added some.
Right.
We added an
But that would
additional-
cover it, wouldn't it? That would cover it, would it
There
not?
was the,
And it's included in the packet, just,
Yeah.
probably just overthinking it, but.
No, that's okay. Yeah, but
yes.
with amended,
Yeah, that's the read that.
you could just say with amended approval.
With amended approval
As well.
as well. I'm going to be an attorney yet. Never
Are we clear on that? Okay, do I have a second?
Yes.
Yes, I second it, sorry.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-1.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Fred.
We're not done.
Oh, I got
We're not done
more to
yet.
go.
We're not done yet,
Y'all know
guys.
that we're not.
We're not done yet, so, but everybody can go ahead and leave before we go on. I know.
I think there was 8 total, and we'll figure this out. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why I think anything in here is not going to.
Please leave, we're not done. Can you talk outside? We're not done yet. So if you could please leave quietly. We have a director item today.
Yes, good evening. It's not evening yet.
Not even, it's
Melissa's
close.
going to present this one. Feels like evening, but not quite yet.
Okay, so the director's item is a request for a 1-year extension of a previously approved case, and that was FLD 2020-01002. And this is for a project at 2425 McMullen Booth Road and an unaddressed parcel right next to it. The applicant has requested a 1-year extension from the Community Development Board for the case number and address as mentioned. And this is to extend the deadline to apply for building construction permit to June 16 of 2023. This is pursuant to our code, where section 4-407, you can grant, the community development coordinator, the director, can grant a 1-year extension, which that has already occurred. So after that, first 1-year extension is granted, any other extension must come to the board. And at the given time, because of the delays with the supply chain and building materials, the applicant is requesting that 1-year extension from you. I can tell you that there are permits on file with our office. They have 1 permit issued for clearing and grubbing. That is not necessarily a substantial enough permit. You can't start construction with that. So the other applications that are on file are in review, but they're so close and yet so far away. So they're asking for the 1-year extension.
Do we know if the site's been cleared?
I'm sorry?
Do we know if the site's been cleared?
I don't think it's been cleared. I've been past it just very recently, and they haven't. I think they're sort of wanting to make sure that the site work permit, that one has not been released. So I think that would go hand in hand with the clearing and grubbing.
I was concerned with, fugitive dust or that kind of stuff that would be an issue. If the site was cleared, it had to sit for a year.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
no.
But they have, I believe, purchased the property and closed on it, I believe.
That I don't know. I'm
I think
not
that's
up to date on what
Yeah, I think they have.
the contract or things like details of that are.
Anybody have any comment on this? I mean, just being in the industry, I mean, the things that are stated in this letter about delays of construction and all that are very real.
Believe me.
So I don't know if anybody's got any comment or a motion?
No problem.
I would motion to extend it the year. I don't have the information in front of me, so.
Director's item it's not a level 2 application, so it's just a motion and approval, Jay, on this thing? Is it just motion to approve, somebody wants to make a motion to approve FLD, to read the case number, if you want?
I move
Yeah,
that we approve FLD, a time extension for FLD 2020-010022425 McMullen Booth Road.
Is there a
Right,
second?
and that expiration date would be to June 16th of 2023.
With June, expiration date of June 16th, 2023.
Correct.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Reset the clock on this whole thing, so in other words, they could do it again with another extension?
Well, if they go another extension, they would have to come back in front of the board. There is a mechanism that they can, but it has to come back again with reason for it, so.
And there has to be some activity and permitting as well to even justify it.
Anybody have anything else to say? Thank you all very much, and staff, motion adjourned. Thank you. Good job.